Ben, are you present, Mr. Ancona?
Yes, I am. Was there a roll call?
I am also online and don't hear I can't hear anything in the meeting.
There.
I think that they haven't turned on anything yet. And I don't know if they're gonna have enough people for a quorum there. All I see is Andreas.
Working on it.
Hearing a lot of echo.
I can't do it.
Council member. Testing.
Give it a try. Hang on now.
Testing.
I see live out. Let's see.
But they're not hearing us in Zoom.
I can hear you.
Oh, now you can. Okay.
I can hear you now.
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, so look up then.
Just go.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna restart at 7:07. Town of Newington Conservation Commission meeting for April 19th, 2022. Mr. Hinckley, please call the roll.
Ben Ancona,
Here.
John Bashand,
Here,
John Casasanta is out, excused. Alan Paskowitz,
here.
Andrea Sedil,
Here.
Jeff Wagner. Here. Bernadette Conway.
Here.
Okay.
Okay, as point of order, I will seat Bernadette Conway in Commissioner Casasanta's seat for this evening. Moving on to item 3, public participation on non-agenda items. Mr. Hinckley, is there anyone on the phone? Speaker is limited to 2 minutes.
There are several people in the room and nobody has raised hand to speak.
Okay, we shall proceed. Moving on to acceptance of minutes. Minutes from Newington Conservation Commission meeting from March the 15th, 2022. Are there any additions or corrections from the commission? I have none. Mr. Wagner?
I have none.
Is there anyone online wishing to speak?
I make a motion to accept the minutes. This is Commissioner Conway.
May I have a second?
I second.
Commissioner Paskowitz.
So moved. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Minutes passed unanimously. Okay, moving on to public hearing. Application 2022-04 for Wetland Map Amendment at 359 Church Street and 321 Tremont Street rear. Applicant and owner AA Donafria Building and Development LLC. The contact is Alan Bongiovanni. Mr. Hinckley, can you read the notice into the record?
I have to find it. I apologize. Notice of public hearing, Town of Newington Conservation Commission, regular meeting of Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. The Newington Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to consider the following. Application 2022-04 for a wetland map amendment at 359 Church Street and 321 Tremont Street rear. Applicant and owner AA Donafria Building and Development LLC. Contact Alan Bongiovanni.
Thank you, Mr. Hinckley. The applicant is present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Alan Bongiovanni. I'm a licensed land surveyor in the state of Connecticut with an office at 170 Payne Road. We have this application and a companion application for a public hearing. If I could ask some consideration from the commission, as our soil scientist is not here yet. He assured me earlier today he would be here on time, but he's still a little late. If we could possibly go to the second application, because the majority of the map amendment is his expertise, his testimony as to what he found on the site.
Do we need to vote on that? I will acquiesce for the applicant, but do we need to vote on that?
You could just, if just to change the agenda, sure.
Can we vote on that?
Yes, you can.
May I have a motion to move item 5B ahead of item 5A? May I have a motion?
I motion it.
We'll move by Vice Chairman Wagner. May I have a second?
I'll second it, John Bouchon.
Second by John Bouchard. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Yes, please proceed. Thank you.
Would you like me to read something?
Please go right ahead.
The notice for this, notice of public hearing, Town of Newington Conservation Commission, regular meeting, Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. Application 2022-05 for construction of single-family homes in the Upland Review area at 359 Church Street and 321 Tremont Street rear. Applicant and owner AA Donafria Building and Development LLC. Contact Alan Bongiovanni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, my name is Alan Bongiovanni. I'm a licensed land surveyor in the state of Connecticut with an office address at 170 Payne Road. I have with me tonight Joe Perugini with Weston and Sampson. He's our civil engineer for the project. And in the audience is Tony Donafria, principal with AA Donafria Building and Development LLC. I'm going to share the screen now and audio, visual. So the subject property located on the east side of Cedar Street, northerly of the Winslow Drive development. It's being accessed by a stub road that is existing Rockhole Lane. Will extend the road into the subject property about 1,000 feet or so. terminating in a cul-de-sac. The proposed development has been before the Planning and Zoning Commission. It is R20 zoned land. We're proposing it as an R20 open space subdivision, which allows us to condense the lot sizes to the R12 zoning requirements, but it allows us to preserve a lot of the sensitive and significant areas of the site so that we don't go too close to the wetlands, and we preserve a lot of nice forested land. Along the northerly side of the site is Rockhole Brook. It flows from the east to the west. It traverses our property at the northeast corner of the site, and then along the westerly portion of the site. The central section here is outside of the property on the neighboring property to the north. I guess I'm better off looking at my screen.
Maybe zoomed in just a little bit more.
That's what I'm gonna do next.
Okay, oh, go to full screen mode, please.
So starting at the western edge of the property, you'll see the squares in the purplish line that defines the wetlands that David Lord, our soil scientist, identified in the field. And we'll get into that in a little greater detail under the other public hearing. But that goes along this section of the property. I'm going to change plans here if I could. The purple area is the wetlands on the subject property as identified by soil type. Our proposal is to include almost all of that wetland area in open space that will be deeded to the town throughout the central portion of the site and the eastern portion of the site as it fronts on Culver Street. We are proposing on lots 3, 4, and 5 that there will be some wetlands and conservation easement on the rear of those lots. The property is going to be serviced by MDC Sewer and Water, which runs in a trunk line comes from the northwest into the site and then runs east-west and comes out on Church Street. Our proposal is to have one impact on the wetlands, and that is a temporary impact in this area here, where we're going to cross a finger of wetlands to service the site with the MDC sewer. It would cross from the existing sewer right away onto the development portion of the site into the roadway, and then after the construction is done, it would be restored to its original condition. The rest of our proposal does not propose any work within the wetlands or any disturbance in the wetland area.
Aside from that one, just setting up that trunk line, Mr. Bongiovanni, that's the only encroachment
disturbance,
into it.
actual disturbance within the wetlands. And as I said, it's a temporary disturbance. All of our services will be brought in from Rockhole Lane, with the exception of the sewer. Construction access is proposed from Church Street. There's an existing curb cut in this location here. And that's how all the site work will be done in the heavy equipment to install the utilities and roads.
Now, is there any flow in that particular site that would be disrupted when you start to dig a trench? How many feet deep? Is there any flow in that area that's going to cause it to be diverted? It's not connected to the main water course there?
It's not connected to the brook. Let me show a little aerial photograph. This is a 2016 aerial photograph. It shows the wetlands. It shows where our sewer line is going to cross the wetlands to come up to the proposed street. This area here, I believe, through my field visits and some investigation with the MDC, this area of wetlands was actually created as a diversion for the water course when they installed the trunk line. There's actually 2 sewer mains in that easement. One is a force main and one is a gravity line. And when they were installing and crossing the brook in this location on the northerly portion of the site, they created diversion from this point, bypassing the construction area to allow that to work without having to worry about dewatering. When their work was done, They did regrade part of it, but that, I'll call it a diversion ditch, was left in that area. And I think that's the explanation as to why there is a finger in that
An
location.
odd shape, yes, it's a
Yep.
fairly odd shape.
Again, it's a basic single-family residential subdivision. I think we've taken great care to minimize any impacts in the upland review areas. There are, we have houses, lots 3 and 4, that are within the regulated area, portions of lots 2 and portions of lot 2 and 5 will be partially within the upland review area. But as this is an open space subdivision, I think it gives the developer and the town the good opportunity to create a development that gives the owner reasonable use of the property while being in harmony with the environment. At some point, as land becomes more scarce, we need to work with the environment and protect it as the best we can. And I think this application demonstrates that. The areas where, unlike lots 3 and 4, at the edge of the conservation easement that we're proposing on those 3 lots, we're actually putting a fence, a split rail fence to mark that area. All those perimeters of the proposed open space to the town of Newington will also have posts with placards every 50 feet so that it's defined as to where it is. People can see it when they're out in their yards. And I think it'll be well protected in that aspect. I think right now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Perugini, talk a little bit about stormwater, drainage, water quality, and then erosion and sediment control.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Joe Perugini. I'm a professional engineer with Weston Sampson. I was responsible for the stormwater management design, as well as the erosion and sedimentation control measures design and review of utilities. Early on in the project, before the design was undertaken, we met with the town engineer to discuss our approach. We had a concept of the subdivision. It really looks similar to the plan that you have before you. Not a whole lot has changed. We came to a consensus on that approach, and it's pretty consistent with that. The development works with the land and the topography. It grades at a high point of the site near the Alston Road cul-de-sac, and generally, as you would expect, grades and slopes in a northerly, northwesterly direction towards Rockville Brook. So the topography, the grading, the roadway profile, it works with the land as much as possible, and that has a benefit too of balancing the site as well. So that is how the design came about. And again, we had some successive meetings with the town engineer as we got closer to permitting and through the planning and zoning process. So I think we've come to a stormwater management design that has basically met with their acknowledgement. We're addressing a few final comments.
So Mr. Perugini, so what exactly is going to be typical sheet flow coming off the properties there? Is it go directly to the brook, or is that going to be put into that MDC, sanitary sewer? How's that going to work?
If I could, Joe. So a couple different things here. Sanitary sewer is sanitary sewer, gray water, human waste.
Right.
It's not stormwater. So that's.
I meant my stormwater is what I was trying to get at.
So our site is going to flow as the drainage patterns stay as proposed as they are currently. They go from the south and drain to the north and northwest. We're proposing a storm drainage system within the roadway that's going to capture that surface runoff and through a pipe system come to an outlet in this location here. There is an existing storm drainage outlet that the town has when the Rockwell or the Winslow Drive development was built. And it terminates in this location here. Working with the town engineer, he's requested that we make some improvements to the end of that pipe. We're actually going to pull it away from the wetlands, 3 or 4 lengths of pipe, and create one level spreader that blends both the new drainage and the existing drainage in that area. Sorry, Jim.
So the intent of that area is just to percolate into the soil, or is there going to be an overflow, or what's the capacity of that system during a heavy rainfall, a consistent rainfall?
So that system is designed as a energy dissipator and a level spreader. We will have pre-treatment of the stormwater quality before it gets to that point. It will flow overland to the brook. This system was designed, and Joe can speak to this in a little more detail. Where we are in the watershed, we analyze the drainage in two different ways. We analyze the drainage in a typical subdivision where you provide detention to capture up to a 100-year storm event. We also analyze this where it was in the watershed and we're closer to the lower reaches of the watershed to see what the impacts were if we were to allow the water to flow unimpeded.
So that means if it's overcome by any winds, it's going to go overland to that westerly direction?
It's going to go overland to the brook. It's going to go overland to the water course from our drainage outlet level spreader in this direction, and it's going to be captured in the brook. Whether we had a detention basin there or the level spreader and energy dissipator, it's still going to go in the same location. We took this approach, or we analyzed this approach for two reasons. One, because of Joe's expertise in his hydraulic section at Weston and Sampson, they felt that this would be a good candidate for allowing it to flow into the brook without detention. And secondly, when the Pfister Farm development was done, that's in the same watershed, that same approach was done. The town engineer at the time was Peter Arbor, and he approved that approach. The reason we looked at that approach, as you've got a fairly large watershed, if we were to detain the water on the site and waited for the upper reaches of that watershed to flow down here, they're going to compete. And that would cause a higher level of water in the water course and the brook. By allowing the lower reaches to flow before the upland or the higher reaches of the watershed come in, it provides less conflict. It provides a lower storm event, if not a storm event, but it provides for lower flows in the larger storm events. Yep.
So when you're talking a level spreader, is there going to be impeded by the time it gets to the brook? Is that going to be clear to get there? Is there going to be some erosion, or how you handle the transition from that level spreader until it gets to the brook area?
The level spreader is actually the energy dissipator, and it is some, I guess, about 60 to 80 feet in width. Currently, you have an outfall in this location here with no level spreader. And it actually, over the 50 or 60 years that it's been there, has survived very well with little to no erosion in that area. At the request of the town engineer, we're going to bring it back and combine it into one level spreader so that it'll further reduce the velocity, less chance of any erosion in the future, and it'll distribute those flows instead of concentrated at the pipe outfall, but over about an 80-foot area so that it'll slow down and have less chance of any erosion.
So you're saying there's one already existing there already?
There is
at
one
that
there
location.
now. We're going to improve that and combine that with this outfall.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to point out, we have designed scour holes. So that's going to take the bulk of the energy dissipation. They're large depressions. We design them in accordance with Connecticut DOT, procedural design criteria.
Are those done through a landscaping, or is actual physical device that's on the ground?
Oh, it's a physical device. It's a scour hole, a plunge pool. Is the terminology that we design based on the velocity, the characteristics of the peak flow coming out of that system, the design flow. It determines how large to make the scour holes. It's a little hard to see, but at each outlet there is a large scour hole. We have details in the plans for that, and those are sized. Even the stone size in the scour hole is sized based on how much energy flow is exiting those pipes. So, yep, you can kind of see the rectangular area that is about a 1 foot deep scour hole with modified riprap. And we did the same for the existing pipe outlet. Now that actually discharges right at the wetlands. We're removing a section of pipe and pulling it back away from the wetlands so that it lines up in the same general area as the proposed discharge. So that way we can connect the level spreader at a similar or consistent elevation. Both pipes will outlet to these scour holes. That's where most of the energy dissipation is going to happen. It's the turbulent flow. It's going to hit
That hole, but rest of it, how deep is something like that?
Sorry,
That,
How deep is it, Joe?
it's about a foot deep.
So, I mean, just for the commissioners, on page sheet 16 to 23, there's details of those scour holes as well as the level spreader, so you can get a visual, a plan view, and a side view, so you can kind of get an idea.
okay, thank you.
And I'm sure Joe can discuss it.
Yeah, detail on sheet 16 in the upper right-hand corner.
Yep.
So it's the same size hole, scour hole for each. Probably the existing pipe flow, we use the same size. It's a little over designed for it, but in order to make it easier on the contractor, we made them the same material, same size. And once the flow leaves the scour hole, it'll then pass through the level spreader, which is just converting concentrated flow back to sheet flow. So the idea is it's sheet flowing, it's less erosive on its way to the wetlands. And the whole goal is to prevent any erosion on its way to the wetlands.
Question for you. So before and after, the impact to the wetland itself, is it a neutral plan versus what's being put into the wetland right now? I'm concerned about what's happening downstream. We have more flow going downstream, which may have an impact due to this development.
You're actually gonna have the same flow, pre and post. What's gonna happen is there's gonna be a little increase in the rate of runoff because we're creating some impervious area. But through the hydraulic analysis, they were able to demonstrate and model the effects of allowing that to come through. And there's less than a fraction of a CFS in a 100-year storm difference in the flow, and it's actually a reduction the way we've designed this and proposed it, as opposed to if we had normal detention. We, in talking with the town engineer and again, Joe's hydraulic experts, that model these watersheds and do this, you know, there's experts in this. The surface level of the brook, if you will, is immeasurable. It's not even 1/100th of a foot increase with any added water from this development. The water already goes there now. There will be, again, a slight increase in the rate of getting to it, but that's done intentionally so that it doesn't compete with the upland flow during large events.
Okay.
Commissioner Wagner, how, yeah, if you look at the land, it's a natural flow that way anyway. So any rain throughout, without it, it's going that way anyway.
Yep.
So no matter what, you're just slowing it down a little bit so it sheets out and it controls the flow at the end.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah, and we look at the 100-year storm. That is the benchmark. That is the regulatory level that we look at. That is the design, the storm that is what we evaluate for damage, flood damage, and the effects downstream. And that is the design storm it was very noticeable that we, again, it's not a much of a decrease, but there is a slight reduction by having runoff from the site leave before the peak of the entire watershed at brook coincides. So it leaves the site, and so we end up having a slight reduction in the brook when you look at the entire watershed with this piece of site incorporated into it.
Well, since the scour hole and the level spreaders, any maintenance required over the years? Is that self-maintaining, or is that the mode, or what is any type of?
So they're riprap, they're stone. They will require an inspection. This is designed, this is gonna be a town road. It's gonna become town drainage, and this open space will become town land. So there will be a requirement to at least inspect it, probably annually or every other year. As Joe described, some of the other measures we have, the chances and likelihood of actually a lot of debris or sediment occurring.
Yeah, the measures that we have in the system that are closer to the road are going to trap and isolate that sediment before it ever gets the outlet. We don't want there to be sediment depositing in that level spreader scour hole. It's going to be trapped within a hydrodynamic separator. That's going to be closer to the road, the edge of road there.
Can you zoom in on that, Ms. Bongiovanni?
Sure.
That's where they come through the vacuum systems every once in a while. They suck all that out.
That's right.
Clear it all out, yeah.
It's like an enlarged manhole structure that Alan will point to its location just off the edge of road after that last manhole right there.
Right in that location there.
So it's at the lowest end of the storm system. Now, we have deep sump catch basins at every catch basin. That's the coarse sediment, the heavy stuff. There'll be debris hoods on every outlet pipe. So any kind of leaves, debris, floatables, that sort of thing, those get trapped at the catch basin. Again, easier to maintain by town staff. And then the real fine pollutants, the total suspended solids, those are going to get trapped in that hydrodynamic separator. It's a unit that we call for a certain model of manufacturer, but we also have a note, if there's a change, it still has to be a unit that's on the Connecticut DOT approved list. We like to have that note on the plans that if there is a substitution, as long as it's a unit that's on the DOT approved list, we have a level of comfort that it's been tested and again, gone through the process of DOT reviewing it and they, again, that list is published online. So that's where that is required to remove 80% total suspended solids. And we've submitted to the town engineer that actual unit. The manufacturer designs it for us based on this site. It's not just a detail we throw on the plans. We're required to go to the manufacturer, come up with this unit. He picks a model, but he also hydraulically evaluates it. And we then provide those results to the town engineer. And most of the time they do exceed 80% TSS removal.
Okay.
So from there, we talked about the roadway system. As Alan mentioned, this is a traditional system with catch basins picking up primarily the impervious runoff. That's what we're really looking at for capture that runoff and ultimately that treatment. Roof runoff will be allowed to flow overland over the grassed areas. That is promotes natural infiltration overland, but also the grass cover serves as filtration of that runoff as well. Like Alan mentioned, when we design these systems in our stormwater report, even on the plans, we include an operation and maintenance plan. So that is for anything that is outside of the town right of way, that is to be maintained. And what the routine of maintenance, it's included on the plans and in the stormwater report. I'll probably talk now about the erosion and sedimentation control measures while Alan pulls up that plan. So this is a bit of a colored up version of the erosion and sedimentation control plan that's included in the plan set. These measures are consistent with the Connecticut guidelines for sediment controls. We start with our perimeter controls that are all obviously on the down gradient side of the site. We're using double measures. That is what is required under the latest Connecticut deep guidelines. So that'll include silt fence backed with compost filter tubes. We also have those measures kind of weaving around the roadway area as well, as Alan is kind of tracing along there. We understand that the road is going to go in first, and we'd like to have those measures shown on the plan that we'd like to pick them up as close to the roadway construction. We know that the utilities, the drainage, the road base, that's going to go in first, get the main infrastructure in. But again, we have them around the perimeter. But within that area, we look at the amount of disturbance, the area of disturbance, and once it gets above what silt fence and compost filter tubes can handle, we then design temporary sediment traps. There's one there, as Alan is tracing it, that is picking up the disturbed area kind of behind those homes along the southerly border. Then the other remaining kind of central disturbed area, it'll all flow downhill into that low area in the northwest corner where we talked about the discharge areas. That is where it's picking up the largest disturbed area. So we size the traps according to the area of disturbance. That converts to a volume that we need to capture and treat. So those trap sizing is designed accordingly.
So why you think that much flow will go down that direction while you're in construction?
Actually, there's standards that the erosion and sediment control manual talks about how many cubic yards per so many square feet or acres of disturbed area. As you'll hear in David's presentation, Mr. Lord's presentation, we actually have very well-drained soils. There may not be as much running to that sediment trap, but the design standard is for all types of soil. So if it was clay, it'd be the same size as if it was a sand pit.
So what point would that be removed? Is that going to be removed last, or that's quite a perimeter of silt fence, you said, all the way around the perimeter, but when would that be removed, that very large sediment trap?
That'll be removed when we have confidence that a sufficient area upgradient has been stabilized. So if the roadway base is put in, usually the base is considered semi-pervious, impervious, less likely for runoff to erode. But usually it stays pretty late into construction, and typically until you get some kind of vegetative cover.
Probably binder and shoulders being seeded and
Yeah.
but the grass established.
We have had projects where that trap can get reduced if an area is a portion of the area has been stabilized. There's ways to adjust that as you go, but it's our safety net for the majority of runoff coming off the site, and making sure that that there is some protection in place. You see a lot of sites that don't use these, and sediment controls get overwhelmed easily. These are measures that are going to go in right at the beginning and stay as long as is necessary. I'll probably go ahead.
Also, a concern about the perimeter. This is going to take several year project, or this is going to take a while. It's during the winter time, heavy winds and snows, and is there a plan to keep that in place? Heaven forbid, with very inclement weather. That's quite a perimeter around that to protect the wetlands.
There is, and one of the ways Joe designed this is in concert with Mr. Donafria's plan of attack, if you will. They're going to put the road and infrastructure in first. They're not going to strip every square inch of the property and leave it exposed. They're going to put the road infrastructure and required drainage in. They're going to stabilize it, do the shoulders before they start construction on the home site. So that's why we have north of the road this cordoned off with silt fence. At some point, when the road is paved and we establish on the shoulders, this silt fence is going to go away. The rear silt fence will be installed, and this silt fence will go away because now we're going to construct the home sites. Beyond local approval and what we're required for this commission and the town engineer and planning and zoning, this is also going to require a DEP stormwater permit. So that will also, some of the guidelines that we use are to satisfy that in our next step.
Yeah, to Alan's point, this plan that we're talking about that's included in the drawings, the details, the notes, that's going to get formalized as part of that deep approval process into a stormwater pollution control plan report. So we have to summarize it, detail it. We also talk about the frequency of inspections. So the state will review that report. You go through, you file it online. We also have to indicate, again, according to their guidelines, the frequency of the inspections. They're gonna be routine or after a particular storm event of half an inch or more. So right at the beginning, these measures get installed, they have to be inspected by an outside inspector. It gets documented. They confirm that they've been installed properly. And then after every rain event or weekly, these would get inspected, a report would be made. The inspector would indicate whether a measure has to be replaced or repaired. And again, it all has to be documented. That is the state requirement. So we always like to mention that on a project that exceeds 5 acres, that even though the town approves it, we're then required to go to the state for a larger project. And it gets that oversight, that documentation, those inspections have to be done.
And the town also has requirements that we have to provide periodic reports to them as far as the condition of the erosion sediment control measures and the site conditions.
And they also have to post an E&S bond prior to construction, but they have to maintain that E&S during construction.
Okay. I want to turn it over to the other commissioners. If there are any questions for Mr. Perugini, I know we've been talking for a while. Mr. Wagner, you have anything?
I think you covered most of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bashand, are you still online? I'll go to you first. Do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, I am. I just wasn't sure if I should raise my questions now or when we revisit it as old business. Since this is a public hearing, I'm not sure, what I should do.
Well, this is a public hearing and you're free to speak. I want to talk the hydraulic question first, okay? And then we can talk later about some other issues, okay? But
So
you're a hydrology guy, so ask away.
Yeah, I visited the site today and to the point about whether that, what are we going to officially call that? I call it a peninsula of wetland, but it's a finger-shaped, east-west feature there. I looked at the flags and they look good to me, except for towards the far west end. It seems to be a lot of ponding water there that I don't know if it's on our map or not. I would suggest maybe they look at it now after we've had a good rain. And as far as that little channel, it was flowing ever slightly, but it was flowing. Somehow it's getting fed either just from the natural runoff from the embankment or some is spilling out of the brook, further back east, northeast. So there was slight movement in there. I'm concerned about that of spilling all of the water into the same area. I would like to ask Mr. Bongiovanni if he knows off the top of his head what the total amount of impervious of this project is. And roughly, if anyone knows what's coming in already from the town system, how much we're draining in there, because I'm a little concerned about, dumping it in the relatively same area, close proximity.
So I don't have the number of or volume of impervious area off the top of my head. I know that is part of our drainage computations that were submitted to the town engineer. The flow from the existing development is, let me see if I can take a look at an aerial photograph that might be a little.
Roughly how many catch basins or?
It's a fairly good area. It may be equivalent to or greater than the area that we have for the site, because don't forget.
Well, Winslow runs downhill pretty quickly too, though. So I imagine we're only.
It does, but we're only capturing from the road to the south. Those houses.
You cut out, Alan. I'm not hearing Mr. Bongiovanni right now.
I'm not either. It's Commissioner Pastovich. We cannot hear anyone.
I'm not either. Commissioner Ancona.
It looks like the room is dead.
I agree.
I have a raised hand up, but no one is responding.
Andreas, if you could hear us, can you wave your hand at least? Okay, so they hear us, but we can't hear you. Nothing coming out of the room.
I'm not seeing them either.
I
But you
can
were
see,
able to see him wave his hand,
yeah,
John?
yeah. You may have to drag your screen a little bit so you could see all the participants. Drag that main map screen over a little bit.
Hmm. I was able to see them, and I'm trying to
one-
figure that out.
Do you see one member that says Helen Nelson Conference Room?
Well, I did, but I'm not seeing it anymore.
Do you see 2 rows of participants or just 1 row?
I don't see any participants now.
Oh.
Maybe that's it. Maybe I need to go back to,
Yeah, you have to go up to view there in the top right corner. And click on side by side gallery.
okay, there we go. All right, there we go. Thank you, John.
Looks like they're scrambling around trying to figure it out too.
And it was going so well.
Yeah, it was.
Can you hear me now?
We hear you, Renata, with a huge echo.
So something is wrong here. We recessed the meeting.
Sounds like Star Trek.
I love Star Trek.
Hello?
Is that you, Renato? Alan, can you hear us?
Are we back in the room yet? Hello, John. Can
Hi,
you hear
Alan.
me? Hi,
Yeah,
what's
I can
going
hear you.
on?
Looks like they're having a major malfunction.
Who's handling the controls?
I'm sure they got the breast.
Your mic is muted. Your mic is muted.
Yeah, I'm sure they have the best and the brightest on it, but for whatever reason, it's not working. I was just curious if Alan is is he remote or is he in the town hall?
I don't know.
Because he
question.
cut out first. Everyone else seems to, all of us on the remote and seem to be able to hear. And
Okay, well. They're sitting there waiting for whom, I don't know. I'd like to know who's,
Somehow we're getting automatically muted too now, so maybe that's a sign that they're getting there. Whenever
Alan has a head growing out of his shoulder. Maybe that's the bug.
it does look kind of funny.
Oh, they can hear us.
They must hear us, but
I'm sorry. I am muting you
that's okay.
because everybody can hear your conversation.
That's fine with me.
Hardwired into the internet with that.
We got you guys.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right, good. Can you hear us now? They can hear us now.
What?
Can you hear us, right, John?
Yes, we can. I can anyway.
Commissioner
I can
Pasquich,
as
I
well.
can also.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right,
Okay,
we're back.
Chairman's ready to start the meeting back up, so we'll continue.
Right, okay,
Back in session.
Newington Conservation Commission for April 19th is back in session at 8:01 PM. So where we left off, Mr. Bouchard had some questions for the applicant relative to hydrology and the amount of square volume and the temporary trap.
So, and actually in this recess we had, we looked into drainage computations. There's about 2.4, 2.5 acres of impervious area on our site out of the total site's 15.6 acres. Actually, we're creating about 2.4, 2.5 acres of impervious surface that will increase the rate of runoff slightly towards the brook upon a full build-out situation.
And you were saying, Alan, that only the area south of the road is going to drain into this storm management system?
Well, that is correct.
What about the
you know,
driveways and roofs on the front of the houses, at least on the north side of the road?
So on the north side of the road, you will get the driveways to run towards the road. So I stand corrected. You will get some front yard drainage towards the road, but the houses themselves, the roof leaders, will be going to splash pads. And this is very, very well-drained soils in this area. So a lot of that we would expect to percolate into the ground. But the majority of the improvement and the land north of the road will sheet flow. Some will go into the ground or will sheet flow towards the watercourse to the north.
And I'll just make one more comment, Mr. Chairman, about the hydrology. And we heard that the town engineer requested these two systems, or these two, to be either combined or to be close to each other. And I would just be curious if that was just for convenience, because it doesn't, to me, it doesn't seem to make sense to concentrate the flow more than it needs to be. The one good thing is the distance between the actual Rockhole Brook and the discharge point is considerable, so it has enough time to slow down and spread out quite a bit there. But I still would question why we're putting it so close together.
So if I could maybe clarify that a little bit. Right now you have an 18-inch RCP that terminates on the property at the edge of the wetlands from the existing development to the south.
Hmm.
We're
Yeah, I saw
proposing
that.
an outlet. We're proposing a separate outlet for the new storm drainage that is to the east of that. And it's about 70 or 80 feet apart.
Okay.
We're not truly combining them, though we are creating one long level spreader after they go through their energy dissipators and their plunge pools. And that is, you might have some additional flow from the existing development that would get spread out over a bigger area after our development drains. it's not truly combining them, but you're gonna have a level, two level spreaders close together. It just makes sense to design it and construct it as one unit.
Is that just out of convenience, maintenance or construction?
Probably a little of both. You know, the town engineer, and we talked about this at length, about making this improvement to the existing pipe and then combining it, a level spreader to capture both. There's probably a little bit of both, as to why he had suggested that. It makes engineering sense to do what he's done here, and we're not going to increase the possibility or potential for any erosion, because we are armoring and protecting the existing as well as proposing it for the future or for the new.
So I did see the existing today, and there's a small plunge pool, maybe, 10 by or 8 by 4 or something. So after all those years, it doesn't seem to cause too much distress
Nope.
to the area. Yeah, I'd just be curious if we know what's the percentage of what we're adding to this area with the 2.5 acres. How much are we collecting? How much is that existing 18-inch pipe carrying? It's probably not a question you could easily answer, but I'd be curious.
It is not something that was part of our required storm drainage analysis. Again, we had originally proposed to leave that on its own without any intervention by us or any modification to it, because it's functioned, again, for probably 50 or 60 years at least, and with no noticeable signs of erosion or failure at the end of the pipe outlet.
Okay, that's it for me for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Bashant. Commissioner Paskowitz, do you have any questions for the applicant relative to hydrology and drainage?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Commissioner Conway?
Yes, so I'm looking at the map that came in the mail, and it's, so I'm going to refer to that. And I realize we're not looking at the same one, but on sites 1 and 10, 11, and 12, it looks like there's some encroachment and wetlands in on those lots, as well as 3, 4, and 5. So that's something that concerns me, and I was wondering if I could get a little more information on those.
Certainly. So you're referring to encroachment of our either clearing or improvements within the upland review area. We are proposing to do some work within the upland review area on lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10 and 11. Because it is good, viable land for development. It is, first of all, it's all north of the sewer right of way, which a lot of that area has been worked by man over time. This actually, where this proposed development is taking place, was former farm field that has been allowed to overgrow in recent decades. But we are proposing to work within the upland review area. It is not a no-build area. It is an area which this commission has the right to review and approve what we do within that area. But it's not now, nor has it ever been viewed as a no-build area.
And I have lost, I'm not able to hear.
Commissioner Bashant? Commissioner Paskowitz, are you there?
I could still hear him, yes.
Yes, I'm here. Commissioner Paskowitz is here.
I can hear Commissioner Ancona.
Thank you.
And I can hear, I just lost Mr. Bongiovanni's response for part of his answer.
So I'll try and repeat what I had said. We are proposing work within the upland review area. That's exactly what that is, an upland review area. This commission has the authority to review the work that we do between that, the wetland and that 100-foot area. It is not a no-build area. It never has been, and it is, as far as I know, today, it is not a no-build area. We are going to be doing some work, proposing to do some work upland of the sewer right-of-way, which for the most part, this is a former farm field that has been worked by man, not in recent decades, but for many years before that. And we feel it's a reasonable use of the property. This development allows for, as an open space development, allows us to dedicate almost 6 acres of land, about 38% of the total property to the town to be preserved as open space, to protect the valuable resource that it has, the water course, the wetlands on the area. There's some floodplain adjacent to the water course. And this plan does that. It allows the owner to enjoy his property, facilitated development without any harm to the significant or sensitive areas of the site.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to just want to go to Commissioner Corner real quick. Do you have any questions?
No, I do not. I'm all set right now. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Bashad, you have your hand up?
Yes. Could Mr. Bongiovanni highlight, or does he have a slide that depicts the upland review area on the map? I could see a very faint line. I had to struggle to find it in the printed map, but so I know where it is myself, but I think it would be helpful if we could see that.
I'm going to go back to this one here. I'm going to zoom in on it. So we're looking at lot number 2 here. This dashed line, this red dashed line that cuts through the house, that's a 100-foot upland review area. If you look just north of it in the open space area that's crosshatched, that purple line is our wetlands. This is a 100-foot parallel to that line. So if you look at lot number 1, we're really just clearing about at the edge of the regulated area. On lot number 2, we're taking liberty within that regulated area. The same thing with lots 3, 4, 5, a little bit of lot 6, and then the rear of 10, 11, and 12, 9, 10, 11.
Yeah, like I said, I know where it is now, but I think it would be helpful for others to be able to see that. In the big picture, it's so faint that it's hard to tell. It's quite a comprehensive plan. That's all for me.
Okay. All right. Was there anything else as far as Mr. Perugini you want to say as far as hydrology and drainage? Does that conclude your presentation at this time?
I think so. We'd be here to answer any questions.
Okay, so I want to move on to other topics. So as far as the property itself, why was not an actual environmental study done? We normally see that in prior applications. We inventory what's on the property as far as species, plants, amphibians, what have you. I did not see one in this application. I was wondering why that was the case.
When we first walked this site, we walked it with David Lord. We looked at the condition of the site, and this is, there's no really, other than the water course, there's no really unique features to this site that we felt warranted that type of investigation. It's not within the NDDB, the Natural Diversity Database. There's no flags or nothing within close proximity to that. We know there's birds and mammals that traverse the property. The first time I was out there, there was a raccoon in the end of the storm drainage pipe. But they're native species to the area, nothing of significant nature. For that matter, the only invasive vegetation on the site to speak of is that land that is just adjacent to the houses on Winslow Drive, to their rear yards. That would be removed when we go to develop those lots. The remainder of the property, it's a nice hardwood forest. It's an open, it's a tall canopy. with probably some really dense cover in the summer because there's no undergrowth in that area. So,
Yeah, I did walk the site and I thank you for allowing me to do that. I did see no fewer than 3 hawk's nests in that high canopy. And they are breeding there. They probably will have to leave that area because they didn't want me there when I was walking around. They were cooing when I was there. So I think there will be some environmental impact.
so the impact that you're talking about to wildlife and species, especially if it's in the tall canopy, those trees for the most part will remain on the site. But germane to this commission as a wetlands commission, I'm not sure that that is part of what this application is about.
Well, this does say Conservation Commission at the top.
I understand that.
And that is of concern to me. But there are deer going through there, obviously. That's going to go probably encroach on those people's properties because they traverse. Obviously, that is a major water course going through there. I would have liked to have seen some sort of environmental study done. I think it's a very sensitive area. And I think it would behoove us to have some sort of environmental study done, take an inventory of what is on that property. I open that up with the commissioners, that's just myself.
Mr. Paskovich has his.
Go ahead, Mr. Commissioner Paskowitch.
Yes, I did a site walk myself yesterday. I spent about 2 hours traversing the property. As I entered from my map here, the Church Street stub there going into a high brush area that's kind of like buffered in, I immediately saw a trail with deer tracks and scat. I walked in a little bit. I could not go any further than maybe 15 feet. It was that heavily shrubbed in. So I went around to the right side where it was a little bit open towards the brook, and I walked along the perimeter of the brook where the floodplain is, continued on that path, and then I moved a little bit forward towards the center, which is where the forested area is. Came upon quite a few timber that is red oak and white oak, and also some swamp cottonwood that were significant in size, mature, but not deteriorating. I did see at some point 2 red-tailed hawks, a pair, on a limb with a nest. So there are hawks nesting right now in that immediate area in the center where this development is going to be proceeding to be excavated and homes built in. I continued along the center and I came upon that sewer manhole cover where the sewer trunk line is and the tail of the wetland that was flagged about 8 feet in width. I continued along from the toe. It continued, I didn't count steps, probably a few hundred feet at least. I didn't go any further. Kind of like a hollow in there. And then up on the left, going towards Rock Hole Lane stub there, it's heavily, I don't know the shrub, but it's the same shrub that was in the beginning of Church Street where I entered, where the deer trail is. I walked up there and there's deer trail significantly, which proceeds all the way back to Church Street. Continued back down. The land is very, it's like a valley in the center where they're going to put this development in, but it's high land up on the Rock Hole stub area where the deer, where I saw the trails where the deer are going to be proceeding and to continue to try to proceed. But as I look at the map, this is where all the houses are going to be placed. So we're going to be losing all that habitat where the deer are moving back and forth over to Church Street. And as I know, I can see across from Church Street, there's the bridge there. There's more of the stream continuing all the way to Young Farm. And there's habitat on both sides of that brook. So the deer are going to be lost. They're going to lose their habitat completely on this side of the development. And as far as the hawks, well, I don't think they like the noise of excavation or movement of power equipment or construction of houses going on. They're going to have to move. So I proceeded back and I went along the lane of the brook. You can't really drop down there very well unless you want to, go into a steep gully. There's a lot of, floodplain area in there. So I continued along the brook for a while, came back up into the center where this housing project is going to be constructed. And I looked around and I said, boy, this is going to be all lost. And the deer trails are right there. The scat is right there. It's continuing all the way back to Church Street. So I was walking back to Church Street. I came upon like a hilly area, like mounds of old, I don't want to call it a dump, but there were mounds of like soil that had been there a while that somebody had placed there. It wasn't like a natural area. So I walked up the top of these mounds and there again, it was this heavily covered shrub area that the deer are using as a trail. As I come upon a mound near that area that I couldn't go down into because it was so heavily covered with this shrub, I saw a deer. And it looked at me. It was fairly good size, at probably about 200 pounds. And it started walking towards me. And I was wondering, why is it coming back towards me if he sees me? He was warning another deer. The deer came out larger than this one. They got together and they bolted, and I didn't see where they went. But the cover is so thick there, it's a perfect habitat for them to be. And they're going to lose that. They're going to lose all that cover. So that's my story about my sidewalk.
Thank you.
Commissioner
Wagner.
Wagner. So you did say you're donating a certain amount of.
Yeah, about
space.
6 acres of land.
6 acres, okay. And we can't touch the wetlands and you're only intruding a little bit on the buffer. So deer naturally will find a path around that. And there's enough, forest and wetlands that they still have there. They still have a path to go through Church Street, across Church Street into the farm there. So you still have a natural path for them that you're preserving.
And
hawks nest what in the spring but they don't usually nest. They'll nest for their youngins and then they abandon that nest once they get older. So it's just like a springtime thing. So I don't know how you could work around that or.
in relation to the wildlife, wherever in the state of Connecticut you live, there is wildlife living amongst the human population. In my own yard, on this piece of property, on our school properties. If you look on Halloran Drive, I've seen more deer crossing Halloran Drive from behind Wallace to get over to the neighborhoods towards New Britain Avenue. They're here, but we have to coexist with the wildlife. And if we develop a piece of property, those animals and birds and mammals will find a way to survive. They may get pushed out of an area. They may get directed to an area that is like the open space that we have here. One of the things I hadn't heard anybody mention, and I know the town's gotten calls from this, there's deer on the property. And the deer hunters know that. I'm surprised nobody's mentioned that they saw deer stands on the property because the neighbors have been hunting that for years. One of the other things that has to be remembered, and Commissioner Pasco has talked about the thick areas. A lot of those thick areas are the invasive species in the former farm field. Those mounds, those knolls, that was excess material that was pushed onto this property when they developed the section of Rock Hole Lane just south of lots 16 through 23, and that was done in the mid-'80s. They pushed their excess material there and mounded it up. I think they thought at that point they were going to move forward with the development. The owner at the time was unwilling to sell the property. Again, this is wildlife, but it's common to the area. It's common to every town.
But I will say that the Hawks, I was impressed with the Hawks. That was unique to that site. There was heavy activity in that area, and that's what caught my attention. I will make that for the record. Deer are deer, they'll nibble some, I get the point.
Yeah.
But there is a sanctuary there for the Hawks. There was 3 Hawks there with 3 nests, two nests, and 1 nest was empty. But they were high up in the canopy, and they were screeching at me, and that's what I noticed the most about that. And I felt, I feel bad about that.
So-
To be honest,
So I will offer
But they-
this, that the majority of that mature canopy, the really tall canopy, is the area that we're preserving. It's downslope. It's some of it's probably especially adjacent to the brook floodplain forest. The area that we're clearing there on the upper elevation was former farm field. Those trees aren't more than probably 40 years old. Looking at the aerial photos in '96, you can still see that a lot of it is, or '92, I believe it is. I don't have it up here, brush, that where the fallow fields are starting to get overgrown. I believe there's adequate habitat for the hawks that are there. They're gonna, if it's a tree that they're nesting in a developed area, they're gonna move to another area adjacent to it. We're gonna protect 6 acres here.
okay. Commissioner Wagner, do you have any more questions on that regard?
I just think that 6 acres is important to protect, and that's reasonable because it's a buildable zone. And if they don't build 23 houses, they're gonna build something there, if they can. And I think it's generous to donate that part of the property.
Okay, Commissioner Bashant, do you have any questions in regards to the habitat?
Yes, thank you. So germane to our calling here, and back to your point of some kind of a environmental study, I would lean towards that myself, because I'm struggling with, and I agree with Mr. Bongiovanni, it has to be a balance, and we're trying to balance everything for everybody. And also the owner of the property, of course. But I'm just trying to determine if the amount of encroachment that we have here is worth the 5 acres. I can't make the determination, or the open space is at 5 or 6 acres. That space right now, it's I believe he referred to it as a wetland or wooded overflow or whatever. Right now, you can't walk in any of that right now. So I'm sure in the summer it dries out enough where people could probably get in there. It's quite wet right now. So that's the part I'm struggling with. Is that a fair trade-off? The generous amount of open space compared to the amount of encroachment into the regulated area, which is most primarily the upland review area. Because I'm just worried about we're going to be on a collision course with some of these homeowners when their entire home is in a regulated area. So we've seen it happen before. We know we have plenty of neighborhoods where properties are fully in the upland review area, but we're talking about one that we're considering approving right now. So as far as your point, Mr. Chairman, I kind of would lean towards your thinking on that.
Thank you. Commissioner Conway.
Yeah, listening to everything that is being explained, I agree on the environmental impact study. That's something I would absolutely agree with.
Okay, Commissioner Paskowitz, was there something more that you wanted to add?
No, well, the open space that's being dedicated is not suitable for building anyway. So thank you for the open space, but it's not buildable. I concur with the chairman on requesting an environmental study on this property.
Thank you, Commissioner Ancona.
Yeah, I agree with the study, and I want to go out there and look at it again. That's all I have to add.
Thank you, sir.
If I
Mr.
just-
Chairman, the applicant will have something prepared by the appropriate professionals in the way of inventory and impact for your next meeting.
Thank you, sir. Was there someone else chiming in there?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, John Bashan here. I just want to clarify that mine is specific, my concern is more specific to the encroachment into the lots that have a significant amount of, that are significantly in the regulated area. And then I don't know if this consultant or whatever will be representing us or the applicant. I forgot how that works. But just wanted to clarify that, my concern. I didn't
Okay.
see the hawks, but I'm interested to hear that they're there, but my concern was mostly just looking at the map and seeing the pretty significant encroachment of some of those lots into the regulated areas. Thank you.
So, Mr. Bongiovanni, you'll take that as an action when you talk to your consultant?
Yes.
Okay, to Commissioner Bashan's point.
Yep.
So I will let you decide appropriate in the field. I'm not gonna pick and choose,
Yeah,
but
no.
I think something adding that to inventory in the area, some photos of the area, I think are appropriate here. Given the size of this development, I think that's fair to add that for documentation with the application.
So you should, there are some public on the line, I'm sure that still wish to speak since the public hearing
I
is
think
still
we're
open.
ready to that point.
Rachel Corral, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Rachel Corral. I'm from 82 Winslow Drive. That's where I live. And I'm actually relieved that people are bringing up the environmental issue because I've lived here for over 20 years and I know that there are tons of deer, foxes, there's a bobcat, there's coyotes, there's hawks, there's several nests in there, or at least 3 nests in there for hawks. So I'm glad that you guys have gone through there and seen all the wildlife that actually exists. And I also know that recently, since people have been going in there, you know, there's a deer was found dead on Church Street. So what's happening already is that the deer are getting scared and they're starting to exit, and you know, they're potentially get hit by cars while they have a lovely place to live right now. And the other thing is, I also know, I mean, I haven't seen the blue heron in there, but it flies over my house frequently. So, and that's a protected animal. So I have some concerns about where exactly he exists in there at some point. So that's my main concern. I also just wanted to bring up the issue of snow removal and where would all the snow kind of end up, and would flooding happen? That was my other issue, but it's really about the animals and protecting them. So thank you.
Anyone?
Zalek, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. I got 2 items I want to point out. First is for the commission. Regarding the site walk, I'm very happy that Chairman Sedil, Commissioner Bashant, Commissioner Paskowitz, and it sounded like Commissioner Ancona may have also been out there. Very happy that you have gone out and done a site visit. You have a better appreciation for the site. I just would like to ask other commissioners to get out there as well, and to look for other wetland features, because as we know, not all wetlands appear on our wetland maps. There could be other features out there such as natural springs, intermittent water courses, vernal pools, etc. To the point of the environmental impact study, if you didn't have that, you could vote on this application as being incomplete. I don't think you should just leave it up to Mr. Bongiovanni to select the expert that's going to do that study. I think you need a very good professional environmental scientist to do that study for you, to give you a complete review. And I think that could include the vegetation as well. It sounded like Commissioner Paskowitz pointed out that there was some swamp cottonwood, which I believe is an endangered species. So that also needs to be taken into consideration. All right, now for the public. On April 13th, the Zoning Commission approved the subdivision plan for Church Street. They did so without a wetlands permit having been issued or a report from the commission. According to Connecticut General Statute, that's illegal. And it's also illegal according to our zoning regulations. If there's any member of the public that wants to appeal the zoning decision, right now is your time, because as you can see, plainly, wetlands has not rendered a decision on this project.
Okay, thank you. Who's next?
Andrew Melnick, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, good evening, commissioners. My name is Andrew Melnick. I live at 118 Winslow Drive. Just wishing to speak tonight in opposition to this application. I'm very, very happy to hear the commissioners who took it upon themselves to do a site walk. I feel like there's a vast amount of wildlife in this area, along with the wetlands. My property is directly abutting to this property. My backyard goes right down into this property towards the brook. I'm very concerned with the encroachment on the wetlands. We haven't gotten to it yet, but with the redraw of the wetlands, I kind of wish that Mr. Bongiovanni or the applicant could show, and hopefully they will show in the other public hearing about the changes, where the upland review zone is now, where they would like to change it to. Also reinstating the fact that the gift of land to the town is, it's, in my opinion, undevelopable land. I am not an engineer, but I just know that that area in the back is quite wet. Summer storm, snow melt in the springtime. That area is very wet. I don't know if any of the commissioners found, with the rain that we've had recently, trouble traversing that property. So I have many concerns about this development, many of which I am delighted to hear others who share my concern who are on the commission. So I thank you for your time and consideration, and that'll do it for me for now.
Thank you.
And those are all the people with raised hands, so there's nobody else.
Okay.
I have a couple of notices to read into the record.
Okay.
Somebody with a phone number and then 215, just raise the hand. You can unmute yourself, 215.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
No, all right, thank you. I want to also, that's Ron Adorno, 54 Alston Road. I also
Can you
want to
get
speak
that
against
name,
the
sir? What was that
development,
name for the record? What was your name again for the record, sir, so we can enter into the record?
Yeah, Ron Adorno, 54 Alston Road.
Thank you.
You're welcome. As I was saying, speak against the development of this area. I too, with the others, I'm happy with the participation of the commissioners. I think they should all individually or together walk the property. It's a very unique property. I also think that the town should appoint the consultant for environmental study. And as far as the wildlife, I've also seen, in addition to what everybody else is saying, turkeys at various points, and the lady that mentioned the blue heron, I did actually see it in the brook last year on the west side of Church Street, down when the water was lower. that was hanging around there for a while as I was on a walk on Church Street. But again, you know, I'm glad with the participation of the commissioners. I think you should appoint the consultant for environmental study and make sure that the whole area is accessed. If it's flooded right now, which it likely is after this heavy rain, that everything should be looked at. Thank you.
Anyone else online?
Yes, Scott Corral, you can unmute yourself.
Scott, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me? It took a
Yes.
while for the unmute button to pop up. My name is Scott Carell. I live at 82 Winslow Drive. First of all, I want to thank the commissioners for your site walks, your questions, and your concerns. I think this meeting is great. I, for one, as many of my neighbors, have felt this development was too big for the area it's going into. And a lot of the concerns have been pointed out. Number one, I appreciate that someone finally said the donated property is unbuildable, because it always has seemed to be that way since the very first presentation. Number two, the lots on the north side. Now, I'm not an engineer, but I don't quite understand how the water from the front yard, from the front of the house, will flow towards the road, when basically, thanks for staking the road, from the road down to the wetlands it's sloped to the wetlands. So, but I don't understand grading, so I could be completely off there. Once again, always felt this development was too big. And if the development is too big, I cannot possibly, in my mind, common sense, understand how it could be good for the environment and the natural habitat. Once again, thank you for doing your site walks. Thank you for asking your questions. Please talk about your concerns. I understand the owner has a right to develop. I know that very well. But is this the absolute best plan for this site and the environment and natural habitat it's going to be a part of? Thank you for letting me speak, and thank you for the job you're doing.
Thank you. Anyone else online?
Not with raised hands at this point.
Hey, Mr. Hinckley, you had some write-in comments?
Yes, we got this petition was also sent to the TPZ Commission, but on these particular ones, they hand wrote the conservation application, so I'm going to read into the record,
please, for
this. Letter concerning petition 1222, 1322, those are TPZ applications. They also hand wrote, and the conservation application 2022-04 and 2022-05. To Ms. Bertotti, Town Planner, this letter explains our opposition to the above noted petition due to safety concerns. The plans currently have 23 houses being built. According to the developer study, there will be 217 more cars on the streets of Stonehenge, Alston, Winslow, and Rockhole. This will affect traffic on all these streets and will impact those on Pickens too. Given the number of houses being built, the number of cars will likely surpass the 217 cars, if not initially, then eventually. In order to reach Stonehenge, the cars will already be on Church Street. There is no reason to have cars leave Church Street and drive down several other roads to reach the new development. Church Street can easily handle 217 more cars on our roads. Additionally, the plans show that the entrance and exit for the construction vehicles is on Church Street. Let's keep the residential vehicles on Church Street too. This is a safety issue for all those living on Stonehenge, Alston, Pickens, Winslow, and those currently on Rockhole. There are many people walking the neighborhood at all times of the day and night. As the neighborhood turns over to younger families moving in, there will be more children at risk too. Our small roads can't safely accommodate 217 more cars. Additionally, it is safer for the residents of the new development for the entrance to be on Church Street. Emergency vehicles, police, fire, and EMS will be able to get to those residents much quicker than having to travel down Church Street and then Stonehenge, Alston, and Winslow, having to traverse several corners and wasting valuable time. Seconds count in emergencies, and a quicker response can and will save lives and property. The current residents and voters of Stonehenge, Alston, Pickens, Winslow, and Rockhold vastly outnumber the potential residents of the new development. For safety reasons of the residents of Stonehenge, Alston, Pickens, and Winslow, and also for the future residents of the new development, the entrance and exit to the new development needs to be moved from Rockhold to Church Street. Please share this with the Town Planning and Zoning Commission. We'll be voting on this petition, and this was sent in by Rachel Carell of 82 Winslow and Scott Carell as well. There's an addendum to the one Mr. Carell signed. It said, P.S. A neighbor started this little letter campaign. I realized the mentioned petition has been closed to the public, but I hope these letters be read and it can be extended for all petitions and applications as this relates to. Thank you for your concern. Scott.
Okay. Does the applicant have any parting comments?
Yeah, just real quick. Commissioners, for the public as well as the record, the commissioners expressed interest in having an assessment done of the environmental aspects of the piece of property. It is not a requirement of the town of Newington inland wetland regulations to provide this. It's not a requirement. Commissioners have asked, the applicant is so agreed to provide that information. That is his purview to do that, to answer the questions that you have. Someone from the public alluded to the town selecting the expert to do this. Because it's not part of your requirements, I don't know that that's appropriate. We will hire a professional that this commission and the town is familiar with a sterling reputation and the expertise to identify the conditions on this property. That is what we're proposing.
I'm perfectly in line with that.
Thank you. Comments about grades. So we staked the center line of the road. Apparently a neighbor took liberty to go onto the property. Permission was granted to the staff to do that and to the commission, not for the general public. But those grades are the center line road grades are a horizontal alignment. They don't represent the elevation of the final design. So I could see how someone could be confused by the stakes that were there, not having the knowledge that we do.
I have a quick question. So how it slopes down this way, are you going to grade up those houses a little bit, or is it just going to be built down?
On the north side of the road, there is some increase in elevation. We will be doing some filling to get the house elevation above the road.
And that would help the drainage towards the road.
That's how
by
the front
elevating
yard is
that.
drained towards the road.
Yes, okay.
One of the things that we did in designing this is we worked our best to balance the site. I think there's a deficit of a couple thousand yards of material, some cutting and filling to make it happen. And the makeup of that couple thousand yards is road base, pipe bedding, things like that, the road. So it's fairly balanced site. We're very careful to do that so we don't have an excess expense on the developer's part, excess traffic, truck traffic on the roads, and utilizing the material there and fitting this to the topography of the ground, so that it's the least amount of impact in all situations. Snow removal, it's a public road. The same way snow is removed on your roads, will be removed on this road. That really is, I don't believe, is a wetland issue. And of course, the whole traffic petition, again, is beyond this purview. So for the next meeting, we'd be happy to provide, again, the expert report that you've requested.
Thank you. I think this concludes this portion of the presentation on this application.
You just probably want a motion to leave it open until the next meeting.
Do we have to vote on that, sir?
You just go ahead.
So I'd like to have a motion. Is in this, and you're in the handy dandy out here.
No, that
one. So may I have a motion to keep application 2022-05 for construction of a single family home in the open review area at 359 Church Street and 321 Tremont Avenue rear. Applicant owner AA Donafria Building and Development LLC. Contact Alan Giovanni, open to next month's meeting. May I have a second?
I second it, Commissioner
Second by
Wagner.
Commissioner Wagner. All in favor? We want to call the
Aye.
roll on this?
I can if you like, or you can just.
Let's
do-
call the roll, make sure everybody can hear us, okay?
Commissioner Ancona,
Yes.
Commissioner Bashan,
Yes.
Commissioner Paskowitz,
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes.
Commissioner Conway,
Yes.
Chairman Sedil.
Yes, so it is unanimous. Thank you. Okay. So, shall we move back to, item A, application 2022-04 for a wetland map amendment at 359 Church Street and 321 Tremont Street rear. Applicant and owner AA Donafria Building and Development LLC. Contact Alan Giovanni. This is for the public hearing.
I can, yes, public hearing for a wetland map amendment at 359 Church Street and 321 Tremont Street rear. Applicant owner A Donafria Building and Development LLC. Contact Alan Bongiovanni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the commission, staff, for the record, again, my name is Alan Bongiovanni. I'm a licensed land surveyor in the state of Connecticut. I'm representing AA Donafria Building and Development LLC in the application before you. This is for a wetland map amendment for the property on Church Street with frontage also on Rockhole Lane. It's a 15.6 acre parcel of land by the town mapping. By the town mapping, there's 3.14 acres of wetlands as identified and 4.84 acres of regulated upland review area. Our soil scientist, David Lord, is here this evening, who flagged the wetlands on the site, and his location of the wetlands allows us to calculate the wetland area is actually 2.59 acres, and the upland review area 4.1 acres. With that, I'm going to turn it over to David, since he is the expert in this. I have a drawing on the screen that shows the perimeter of the property. The purple area is the wetland that's highlighted, that based on Mr. Lord's identification in the field. And then the red line that starts on the left side of the screen traverses in a northeasterly direction, then easterly, and then in a southeasterly direction. That is the limits of the town wetland for our official mapping. With that, David?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is David Lord. I'm a professional soil scientist and environmental consultant. My company is Soil Resource Consultants, and I have an office in Meriden, Connecticut. By way of introduction, since I don't believe I've appeared before the members of this commission, I'll give you just a quick background. I have undergraduate degree in natural environmental systems, and I have a master's degree in soil science. I've spent the last 44 years working with soils and wetlands in both the state of Illinois and the state of Connecticut. Since 1987, I've been a private consultant. Previously, I was a member of the USDA Soil Conservation Service, the organization that actually did the mapping for the state of Connecticut, the base map that people refer to. And that's probably a good place to segue. That particular document was published in 1955. It was not done for the purposes of regulating or identifying inland wetlands. It was almost 20 years prior to the establishment of wetland regulations. It did not specifically identify soils on an individual site. The smallest area that identified is in excess of 3 acres in size. Be smaller than that, they did not break out individual soil types. What you're seeing on this drawing is an actual representation of what's physically on the ground. You have not lost wetland by the placement of the delineation flags on this property. You have a site-specific delineation and representation of what's actually on the ground. So I get asked this question all the time. Well, there's more wetland on the site now, there's less wetland on the site. That does not change in reality. The wetlands have always been there. Those wetlands have been forming since the last glaciation, which was 10,000 plus years ago. Those wetlands that we identify are generally of that age. They do not change. You can create them by lowering topography. You can lose them by filling, but you do not create or you do not identify or change the amount of wetland on a particular property without doing some extensive work. So by that, I just want to lead into how the process is done. I walked the site in June of last year, placed 80 flags along what I believe to be the actual boundary of wetlands on this property. Each of those flag locations is the result of a series of borings that are done on site with a hand on it. It's not just the visual representation. We actually do core sampling. I mean myself, core samples that identify the characteristics that are identifiable in the state of Connecticut as a wetland soil. Those core samples are done above what ultimately becomes the wetland boundary and below what becomes the wetland boundary. So it's a very scientific, thorough process, and you can see from the placement of the flags on this drawing, I try to not exceed 50 feet in dimension unless there's an obvious boundary or an obvious change in wetland to upland configuration. Sometimes they're much closer because wetlands can move in an irregular manner. But generally, I try to keep a 25 to 50 foot separation distance between one flag and the next. And
Sure, Mr. Lord, just if I interrupt. So on each one of these flags, was there a boring? How many flags are there versus borings taken?
there are 80 flags on the site. There were probably in excess of 200 borings done.
Okay. Is there any documentation or photo from those borings that you can provide for the record?
By photos, you mean?
When you pulled the auger out of the ground and we saw the soils, was there any photograph of that?
No, but I can provide those. It's not generally done and presented because from a practical standpoint, if I submit that as in effect, a document into the record, you have to keep it in your files and records. So it's generally not asked of me. What I can do is I can bring in photographs of soil borings. From this site that will show you the difference between upland at a particular flag and the wetlands on a particular flag.
Yeah, most of the particular, if I get to cut to the chase here, in the right-hand side there, you have the orange shading and the red line there. That's a difference there, okay? Like you mentioned, as far as the delta.
Yes.
Right here.
Yes.
So you don't have to do everyone, but a sampling of showing for evidence for the record as substantiation. That would be nice, not the whole 81, but just to show the site. I appreciate that.
I'll give you an example in several areas of the site so that you can see.
I would appreciate that.
The upland soil boring and the wetland soil boring. And in general, we look down to a depth of 20 inches or greater.
Correct.
For those wetland characteristics.
Redox soil, they think they're called redox soil.
Excellent, you've been through the training program.
Yeah. And like I said, it's a significant, I'm not doubting the conclusion here, 1 iota. But I'd just like to have, since it's a difference, a major job here, reduction, I just want for the record, we have substantiation for the record, and that's all I'm asking.
Well, it's a reduction in the right-hand side, it's an addition in the left-hand side.
Right.
So that's why there's only a half an acre of something, approximately a half acre of difference between what the official
Before and
map
after.
shows
Yeah, understood.
and what my drawing shows. And that's not at all unusual to have a difference. Because again,
Oh, sure.
the soil scientist that I was one at one time in my career, we try to average 320 acres a day in mapping. It's primarily done for agricultural purposes. This is a soil, what's its management potential for agricultural use? In the realm that I do now with delineations for development purposes, can generally do about 15, when I was younger, 20 acres a day. So you can see the scale, 320 acres versus 10 acres. It's much greater density and focusing on the soils that we do for development purposes as opposed to the soil survey. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of things for the record. In the state of Connecticut, David, how are wetland soils defined?
Wetland soils are defined as poorly and very poorly drained floodplain or alluvial soils. Those are the four categories. They generally have reference to proximity, seasonally or persistent, close contact with the soil surface, or in the case of alluvial soils, the water table is sometimes in play, but it's also not really relevant. There's a place in Tungus Mead Park in Farmington where the water table is 30 feet down below what is considered an alluvial soil. And it's still regulated as a wetland, even though the water table is that far down. So it's those four categories of soils are what we define as wetlands in the state of Connecticut. And it is by soil type. The other category is water courses. Intermittent water courses were mentioned by in one of the comments. That is a characteristic of wetlands where you have a permanent channel with banks, and this is all defined. Some of you are probably familiar with the definition. Permanent channel with banks and 2 of 3 secondary criteria. Standing or flowing water not directly related to a storm event. Some of the surface water that may be on the site at present would not be considered associated with a storm event. Last night's storm event left a lot of water on the surface. You're looking for long-term separation between a storm event and the presence of water. And then hydrophytic or wetland associated vegetation within the channel and the evidence of alluvial scour or deposition. Those 3 secondary criteria, you need 2 of them. And at the beginning, you also need a permanent channel with banks, something that looks like a channel. It's got a bottom and it's got sides. That's how we define it. It's talked about a little bit in the section under inland wetland soils, but that's the character. On this particular site, and I'm turning to the December 3rd, 2021 report, which is part of the application document. It's addressed to Mr. Giovanni. On page 2 of that, identify 2 soils and the presence of water course. The soils are Limerick and Saco soils. Those are within the purple areas indicated on the map before you. Those are alluvial or riparian brook associated wetlands. They have poorly to very poorly drained soil conditions, and they generally are in close proximity to a stream, a brook, or a flowing stream of water.
Mr. Lord, I have a question in that regard.
Sure.
So these 3 types of soils you mentioned here, you start watercourse, Limerick, Saco, does they come as they go away from the brook, or how is that? Are they
No,
bunched
actually,
regional? Is it just, like a cake, if you will,
They're
how
part
does
of
that
what's
work?
referred to as a family of soils. They are differentiated based on their origin, what type of soil forming process developed, created, made that soil type. They change slightly over time, or distance from the brook, but it's not a true progression from one soil to the next soil to the next soil. In the uplands, we do have a progression from moderately well-drained soils to well-drained soils to excessively drained soils. Those do go in elevation. These soils, just as an example, the Saco soils are very deep and very poorly drained. The Limerick soils are deep and poorly drained. The poorly drained, the water table is a little lower below the soil surface at a period of time during the year. The very poorly drained soils have water table which is either at or in some cases above the soil surface for a significant period of time. So those soils formed under that degree of soil saturation long-term over a very long time.
Okay. Thank you.
There's also textural
Differences.
a component that is used to identify and classify soils. These are both silty alluvial soils, meaning that they were water deposited, but they were in areas that maybe had a slightly higher elevation, so it's poorly drained, rather than the lower, which is very poorly drained. So those are some of the factors that go into identifying a soil in a wetland as Saco or
Limerick.
In this case, Limerick. There are a number of soils. Those are the ones that are found on this particular site. Moved through different sites throughout the state. You run into a lot of different soil types that are wetland and additional ones that are upland.
Okay.
Non-wetland soils are all, as you've already heard, very highly permeable, gravelly sands or fine sandy loams in the surface layer and stratified sands and gravels in the subsurface layer. Means that water, that rain that falls on the site has a tendency to soak in a very quick distance from the point of where it hits the ground rather than running off. Runoff rates are not high in these particular soils. Those of you that have walked around the site, you'll see there's not a lot of rills or channels that have been cut through in a generally northerly direction towards the brook on this site. That's a function of the soils and the characteristics and the permeability of the soils. Water soaks in very well on these particular soils. And lastly, there's a generic term when soils have been disturbed and we can't identify the horizons within the soil, the strata or the layers of the soil. This is a taxonomic generalization for upland soils. We have those in the entranceways off of the existing cul-de-sac roads. There's also one in the area of would be 14, 15, and 16. And also the mounds that are referred to off of on the west side of Church Street would be an example of where eutherthents would be located on this particular site. It's somewhere that man has changed the physical characteristics and the horizonation of the soils to the point where we can't classify it into a natural soil.
If you don't classify it, then does it count as upland or doesn't count as wetlands?
The eutherthents are upland soils.
Or just all upland?
There's an aquant, which is the wetland version.
Okay.
If you go into a disturbed wetland that's either been excavated or filled, but is still classifiable as a wetland, an example of that would be a natural wetland that has 6 inches of fill over the top of it would be considered an aquant.
Yeah, because you still, when you go
Because
down, you get
when
that.
you go down that 20 inches, you still get
Okay.
wetland class characteristics of the
Thank you.
soil. Then I include a sketch, a couple of sketches. In this case, the identification of the soil types on the particular.
I think he went silent again, guys.
What was the,
Yes,
la-
they did.
No, now they're back again. Well, temporarily back.
Can you hear us now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The only point I'm making with that is that the Branford and the Manchester soils and the disturbed upland soils are where the houses are going to go. The closer you move to the brook, which is generally to the north or northeast, northwest, the first soil you will encounter will be the Branford soil. That's a moderately well-drained soil. It has a water table that's down about 24 inches or so below the soil surface. You move farther up gradient, closer to the south side of the proposed roadway, you're definitely into the Manchester soils, which have a very deep 36-inch plus water table condition. Moves into the ground all the way down to the water table, and the underlying water table is moving towards the brook in this particular site. That's all I have to present at this point. If you have any questions further, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
I am good, Commissioner Wagner.
I am good.
I'll move to the telephone. Commissioner Bashan, do you have any questions for Mr. Lord? Oh. Commissioner Bashan?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
So I took a walk on the site a few weeks ago and then again today. My first visit, I saw the flags, especially in this little fingerling wetland here. And I was satisfied that it looked like it was mapped according to what I observed with my casual observation. Today, when I was there, I saw a considerable, and I mentioned this earlier, surface body of water beyond that. So I'm looking at the map, it would be somewhere behind lots, at least it appeared to me. I didn't have a map with me, so I couldn't tell exactly, but it appears by what I'm looking at here that it would be behind lots 6 and 7 and maybe even up to 8, all the way up to that corner of the property. It looked like a fairly significant surface body of water. I don't know if it qualifies as changing the our outlook on this wetland map, but I would ask the soil scientist. I know he mentioned he was there in June last year, if he's been back since, and especially after this heavy rain. I don't know if it's just a temporary ponding effect, but it almost to me appeared to be a nexus between the brook itself and this little swale here, because there was actually movement in this body of water. That's it for now.
So Lord, do you
Me to answer them?
rebuttal, please?
That area was extensively looked at behind lots.
6.
6, 7, 8.
Yeah, 6, 7, 8, because of the terminus of what I classified as a wetland. At flag, and I'll just go over to reference a number.
34 is pretty much your tip of that finger there.
Easterly of flag 34, the ground is significantly higher. It's also very flat to rolling. It has slight depression areas in there. I looked at that area extensively. If you were out on the site and walked in that area, you probably saw a number of pink and black striped flags that were just scattered throughout that area. Those are described in my report, are areas where I did soil borings and didn't find wetland soils. I do that on a regular basis to confirm or document the fact that I did look at those areas. Those areas generally have some disturbance. You've already heard one reference to that area being a bypass channel when the sewer was put in. The structure of the soil, anytime you move the soil, you destroy some of the internal structure of the soil. It makes them compacted. They don't infiltrate as quickly as a natural undisturbed soil. What you're seeing there is a reaction to that disturbance and settling of the soil, likely at the time when that bypass was excavated and dug. I did look at that area because I always look at terminuses of a finger of wetland and why they stop at that particular point on the landscape, because I know there's going to be a question about that kind of area. And the area that's being talked about is one of those that I did extensively look at. There may be some movement because of existing ground topography where water is moving from a slightly higher area of pooling and moving. The presence of pooled water does not in and of itself make it a wetland soil. The water has to saturate the soil for a minimum of 3 weeks during the growing season of the year. We're not even 1 week into the growing season of the year right now. For that area to be classifiable as a wetland, it would have had to have extremely long time saturation down to the water table so that the soil characteristics, the geomorphology changes. You'll have to excuse me. I'm an old soil scientist that hydrology terminology sometimes slips through me. For the poorly drained soil characteristics, the modeling to represent itself in the soil column, it takes a very long time.
Basically, the soil would tell if that was saturated more than 3 weeks throughout the year.
For those colors to change from what is natural brown to reddish brown to the rust colors or the gray colors, that's a minimum, and usually it's a lot longer period.
And you did not, Commissioner Wagner, you did not see that when
But
you
I
did
did
it.
not see that within the first 20 inches.
So it's just a seasonal thing going through, and the soil tells everything, basically.
And just as a side note, how many times have you driven down your neighborhood and seen in somebody's front lawn after a big storm event a pond?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's a wetland.
Yeah.
If I could continue.
The soil tells everything, basically. You did the soil sample, it indicated it wasn't wetland, and that's what we're going off of.
Commissioner Bashan.
Yes, so back to that same point, I'm being very careful not to myself try to classify it as a wetland, but I'm just giving you my observations today. And I asked the soil scientist if he has seen it recently. I'd be curious about, it seems a significant body of water. I'm perfectly aware that we get ponding in lawns and everything. So I'm being very careful not to myself try to classify this as a wetland or change his mapping, but I'd be curious to see how it looks in a few weeks from now or 2 weeks from now. And also the existence of all this skunk cabbage, I don't know the proper name for it. I'm sure by itself doesn't mean that it's a wetland, but it's quite significant in that whole area there. That whole plain is covered with this green leafy cabbage stuff. So
The use of vegetation is only one of the secondary criteria for an intermittent water course. It does not define the presence of wetland soils. Skunk cabbage is very commonly identifiable in a wetland, but it does grow in non-wetland areas that has sufficient moisture for at least a period of time during the year. The presence of those models within the 20-inch are there, whether it's a dry period, a wet period, or any time of the year. I flag wetlands 365 days a year. I should say, flag wetlands 365 days a year. The only thing that prohibits me from doing it from my own personal is snow cover. The soil colors that we look for are there within the soil. They don't go away in dry periods and come back in wet periods. So it is the true determination of wetlands by soil type in the state of Connecticut.
Commissioner Wagner, So again, for the record, you took samples and it says it's not wetlands by
Yes.
the soil samples. And the only way it's gonna be a wetland is if it indicates to the soil.
Right,
And it didn't indicate in the soil.
yes.
Right, there we go.
And I will try to get you a representative photo of that area with a couple of skunk cabbages if they're there in the background to show that I was in the same spot that was just referred to.
Appreciate that.
Not-
Mr.
not to
Bashad,
be-
were there any
yeah,
further
not
questions,
quite
Commissioner
finished.
Bashad?
So just one more time, I would ask the soil scientist if he has seen it recently, because I'm not talking about a wetland soil, I'm talking about a surface body of water. I saw-
No, I
did
haven't.
did I
haven't
observe
been out-
today?
I haven't- No, I have not been out there today or anytime recently.
Do you think there's any benefit to you seeing it again?
I'm gonna go out to the site and look at it, but no, the characteristics that I'm looking for do not change over time. They are there, whether it's wet, dry, or in between.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Paskowitz, do you have any questions for Mr. Lord?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Lord, for your comprehensive explanation of wetlands and been in the last 40 years in consideration with USDA Soil Conservation Service, which I spent some time as a volunteer, so I can acknowledge that as you being working with them. The question I have is this. You mentioned a couple of times that wetlands don't change in their presence of characterization. So just curious about that fact. The total area of wetlands by the town mapping is recorded here as 145,524 square feet. The total area of wetlands identified by yourself, soil scientist, is 113,119 square feet. The question is maybe not you for you to answer, maybe you do know the answer, or Eric Hinckley, the staff wetlands person, knows. When was the town mapping done?
The soil survey for the Hartford County was done in the early 50s and published in 1955.
So for this particular site, the town mapping was done relative to that time?
I'm sorry, say that again?
So the town mapping, Commissioner Paskowitz, the town mapping, I believe, was created in mid-70s, around 1974 with the Wetlands Act.
73 was the Wetlands Act, and they used the old soil science
Soil
maps from the 50s.
Soil surveys from the 50s.
Right. And some of it was enhanced with some aerial photography at the time, but as you know, looking at aerial photography from the early 70s is you're going to get a lot of differences, and scalability issues.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that this was done primarily by aerial photos, not by on-the-ground hydric soil sampling with an auger.
No, the soil survey, which is your base for the town's wetland map, was done by soil scientists like myself, going over the land, doing a very, very less intensive survey. Again, 320 acres a day versus 15 to 20 acres a day amount of soil identification. This survey that's the basis for the town map was compiled and published 20 years before inland wetlands came in as a regulation. So it was not a document that was generated specifically to assist with the implementation of the wetland regulations.
Commissioner Meyer, I have a question, if you
Go
don't
ahead.
mind. I just want to jump in here.
No,
So you're saying
I'm
they
not
did
finished
less
yet.
boreholes?
I'm not finished. Please
Sorry.
don't.
Go ahead, Commissioner Paskowitz.
All right. So what I'm hearing is in the 70s, this was determined by soil scientists from USDA.
No, it was done in the early 50s and published in 1955 as the Hartford County Soil Survey, or Soil Survey of Hartford County, Connecticut.
And
So you're talking about data that was done at a less intensive means 20 years before regulations of wetlands came into state statutes.
All right, let me refer to that statement. So you mentioned, I believe, that it was done on a premise of 320 acres a day versus what you've done, which is down to a scale of 15 to 20 acres a day, which is more specific. Is that correct?
Yes.
And actually, if I could correct Mr. Lord, he was there for 2 days. Maybe not 8 hours a day, but I think he was there for 7 one and 7 the other. So he spent about 14 hours on 15 acres of land.
Yes.
All right, well, you've identified the difference now between the square footage of how it was arrived at with the town mapping from the 50s regarding the acreage that was done in a smaller instance by yourself to make it more collectively specific. Thank you very much, Mr. Lord.
Yeah, you're welcome. Commissioner Wagner, do you want to chime in? quickly?
Yes, I was just, you got to the point where like, you did way more extensive search, like holes to determine this new amendment.
Oh,
Versus
yes.
what they did in the they might have did a borehole every 100 feet versus you doing it every, so.
Not
you know,
even that.
Not even that.
Not even that close.
So that wasn't even specific to what it would be if how you did it.
They
You
would have
did it-
walked through a site like this, did a couple of borings, and then used whatever aerial photography or base map they
Yeah.
had.
And you
to
did an
sketch in.
extensive one by putting how many maps out, you mapped it out more extensively.
Yeah.
One of the telltale signs too of the inaccuracy of some of the old mapping is where it's not parallel with this contour, but it goes perpendicular and you've got a wet area at the bottom and it goes straight up the hill, which is the situation we have on the western end of the site.
Yeah.
Commissioner Conway, have you any questions for Mr. Lord?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Commissioner Icona, we haven't heard from you. We have any questions for Mr. Lord?
No, I do not.
Okay. Do we have anyone at the public waiting to speak?
Yes. Andrew Bellick, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so through the chairman, I'd just like to ask the soil scientist regarding the soil survey that was done. As we know, the town maps are not entirely accurate and wetlands can exist outside of what we have on our current maps. Just curious if you surveyed the entire property. Curious about like areas like 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, where they proposed to build. Did you walk those and see where there were, any possible signs of other additional wetlands, water courses, intermittent water courses, or wet meadows?
Yes, I have walked the entire property. Looking for the features that you're talking about in addition to wetland versus upland soils.
Very good, thank you.
Anyone else on the line? Yeah, but from the public.
Yes. So who was this, Jeff Zolik?
That was Jeffrey Zellick who just spoke.
Andrew Malak, you can unmute yourself.
Name and address for the record, please.
Andrew Melnick, 118 Winslow Drive, Newington. I guess my question is specific to the wetland, purple highlighted area that I'm seeing that's running directly through lots 3 and 4 and partially extending into lot 5. What is the significance of that area, and is that a cause for any concern for building on those lots?
From a qualitative standpoint, it is a feature which drains generally to the west when it has sufficient water in it. It has a relatively flat bottom. It's identifiable as a wetland by soil type, but I see it as not having any significance as far as the buildability of lots 3, 4, and 5, because you're looking at a feature that was created by excavation down to contact with the underlying water table, groundwater table. For instance, it's not of similar character to some of the natural wetland areas such as north of Lot 2. Those are natural wetland soils which have a much thicker surface layer, organic matter content. If you were looking to build in close proximity to or along the edge of those, that could be an issue unless you took very proper and extensive care in designing for that structure. But I see no reason why lots 3, 4, and 5 could not be more than adequately protected from causing any adverse impact to that finger of wetland.
Okay, and I have one more question, if I might, about the encroachment into the buffer zone. That line is not currently showed on the map that's being displayed, but there's a significant encroachment in lots 2, 3, 4, and 5 to that. Also to the roadway in the bend where it comes from the existing stub road on Rockhole. I believe the 100-foot buffer goes through the actual roadway surface. I'm just wondering about in the future homeowners of the Rockhole subdivision, what kind of encumbrance are they going to find themselves being in if they wish to place a accessory structure, gazebo, shed, possibly a pool? Are they going to have issues? Are they going to need to go before the commission to get permission for that? Is that something that's going to be allowed, something that's not going to be allowed? Just wondering about those types of issues that will arise once the subdivision has been built out by the developer.
For situations like that, that is material removed in the upland review area, that would require a permit that would come before the commission for approval. That's the way the process works. Correct me if I'm wrong.
The note is actually stated on the plans.
Yeah.
On sheet 5 in that area in the conservation easement.
Right. So
And yeah, that's true. And to speak to that really quick, Mr. Melnick, your neighbors to the west. If this map amendment is successful, we will relieve them of a burden because the wetland is right along the rear of their property. And today, they would have to go for a wetlands permit to do anything in their backyard. If this mapping is accepted by this commission and the amendment is made, that wetland would be moved away to where the purple is shown, and they wouldn't have that burden.
thank you. Anyone else? Next member for the public.
No one with raised hands right now.
Okay. What is the feeling for the commission? I have no further questions for the applicant relative to the map amendment. Do you?
I have no further questions.
I would like to, what does the rest of the commission online think? Commissioner Bashant? Go ahead.
Am I allowed to speak now?
Yes, you have the floor.
I do have one more question. And again, this is going back to my observation of today. Would an intermittent water course must an intermittent water course contain wetland soils? Because I fully trust the research of the soil scientists that there's no wetland soils there. But again, I'm just going by what I observed today. And when I look at this map, I see that it was within the former wetland boundary. We know that a lot of that was just even flyover mapping, but I just to that question, must intermittent water course contain a wetland soil?
The answer to that is no. The intermittent water course is based on the physical characteristics which I described earlier. existence of a permanent channel with banks in 2 of the 3 secondary criteria. Flowing or standing water, wetland vegetation, or alluvial scour deposition. That is something that I regularly look for when I walk the entire area of a site that I am asked to delineate. So I can very definitely say, this is the extent of wetlands, the extent of any intermittent water courses, and the finger that we've been talking about a little bit on lot 3. In some places farther to the west, there are sections that could be considered an intermittent water course, but they're already defined by the wetland boundary. So the area has been totally investigated for all features and resources that are regulated by this commission.
Okay, if I may continue, Mr. Chairman.
Please do.
So I think you're alluding to whether we want to keep the public hearing open. I would lean towards it, only because I hope that the soil scientists could get a chance to, take one more look at that before we decide. I was perfectly comfortable with this 3 weeks ago when I looked at it. But again, I can't get over this, what I observed today. And I'm not making any accusations or claiming that it's a wetland or a water course. I'm just going by what I observed today. That's my feeling towards closing the hearing or keeping it open.
Okay, Commissioner Paskowitz, what is your feeling?
Well, I feel that Mr. Lord here presented a very professional evaluation of this property, in which he worked on extensively in the hours he proceeded to take samplings and indicate the types of soils that are on the site that are wetland soils. And I'm satisfied with that part. I didn't know we were going to be speaking about the public hearing. Is that part of what you're asking?
Right, so basically, we're asking, there's no further questions. Close the public hearing. We would go into our deliberation and we would vote this evening. And
this is not based just on his testimony.
Yes, sort of is. Per the rules, we got to get everything out in the open before we can close. Mr.
If I may add, this is for the map amendment only. This is
Correct.
not for the wetlands permit for the
Correct.
development itself. That's the hearing we had previously.
Right, this is just for the map amendment based on what we had the discussion with Mr. Lord. It's just concurring on these new wetland mapping, okay?
I'm satisfied with what I've heard at this point on this part of it.
Okay. Commissioner Conway.
I'm satisfied with what I've heard as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Ancona.
I'm satisfied too.
Okay, the only outlier, if he supplies that information, can he provide that after the fact? That's not legal? Okay.
We can give it to you as part of the other hearing.
It's fine.
It materially won't make a difference.
It won't. Okay. Thank you, sir. So I think we have some votes here to close the public hearing. So to that effect, I think it's first of all, we have to vote to close the hearing, correct?
You have to close the public hearing and then
I need a motion to close the public hearing for application 22-04. That's right. For wetland map amendment at 359 Church Street and 321 Tremont Street rear, applicant and owner AA Donafria Building and Development LLC. Contact Alan Bongiovanni. May I have a second?
I second it, Commissioner Wagner.
Second by Commissioner Wagner. Please call the roll, Eric.
Commissioner Ancona,
Yes.
Commissioner Bashan,
I'm abstaining.
Commissioner Paskowitz,
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes.
Commissioner Conway,
Yes.
Commissioner Sedil.
Yes.
Okay, so the public hearing is closed.
So we have 5 yes, 1 abstention for the record. All right. So I guess at this point, the applicant takes a break and we vote.
No, that'll come under old business. We got,
Okay.
all the public hearings are done, so now we're moving to new business.
Okay, does anyone want to take 5? Or anybody flattery? We shall continue. I'm just, don't want to punish anybody.
Whatever you want to do.
I'm going to
You're silent again. Did they take 5?
Looks like they're taking a break.
Oh, okay.
I could be wrong because
No,
I
I
can't
think-
hear them either.
I think you're right. They're wandering around, so.
Let them know. We're in a 5-minute recess right now till 9:45.
All right, thank you, Eric.
Newington Conservation Commission meeting for April 19th. Moving on to new business, extension of permit number 2017-06 at 98 Carriage Hill Drive. Ms. Tinkley is the applicant present, or are we gonna do this?
I believe Joanne is in the room. If she'd like to just make a brief request.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Joanne.
Hi, yes, we're looking to request an extension of the permit that we applied for and was approved 5 years ago.
This is the, just for a point of reference, this is on Carriage Hill Drive. They had applied for it and received approval from the commission for an in-ground pool. At that time, they just haven't had the time to start the project yet, and they were getting to the end. They just want to make sure that they were able to extend the permit.
Okay, is the application in order per?
Yep, application is in order. There's no change at all to the plan. So
And this is the only extension, 5 more years, and that's it?
5 more years,
Is
correct.
the applicant acquiesced that will be finished in 5 years? Is you only allowed this one extension?
Yes, that's correct.
If not, you would have to apply for a new
A
permit.
new application.
Understood.
I have no questions, Commissioner Wagner.
I have no questions.
Commissioner Bashant,
I'm good.
Commissioner Paskowitch,
I'm fine with good to go.
Commissioner Conway,
Yes.
and Commissioner Ancona.
I'm good.
All right, so, we need our secretary.
Well, basically, again, this will just roll to old business.
Oh, it'll roll to old business?
Yep.
Okay.
So, well, because we still have another
Oh, here he is.
presentation. Yeah, he came to get you.
Okay, so, that's fine. Then we can move on to new business item B, application 2022-06 for construction activities in the upland review area at 165 Stam Road. Applicant and contact Mike DeMayo, owner, MRD Property Holdings LLC. Is the applicant present?
The applicant is present. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Alan Bongiovanni. I am a licensed land surveyor in the state of Connecticut, and I'm representing City Paving, or the actual applicant of MRD Property Holding LLC in this application before you. The property is on Stam Road. It's on the west side of Stam Road, about a third of the way down from the Britton Avenue. It runs from Stam Road all the way out to the west, which is Webster Brook and the railroad tracks. The property has been used by Mr. DeMayo and his company for decades, I think 30 plus years, as a paving contractor's yard. It's a fenced-in property, and he's looking to make improvements on it. The reason we're here before you today is at the western edge of the property, there is a wetland, there's a water course that runs parallel to the railroad tracks, and there's the 100-foot regulated area. All the improvements are actually there. What we are proposing so the only work we're actually proposing within the regulated area is to construct a water quality basin to clean the water, polish the stormwater runoff from the site that currently exists before it enters the water course. He's proposing improvements to the site, actually constructing a building that's shown here on the right side of the plan with some associated paved parking and landscaping. But the remainder of the site is going to remain as it is, a contractor's storage yard. It is a base of pavement millings that has become impervious over the years of compaction. And in order to accommodate this, we needed to address water quality. So that's what we've done here. We've created a water quality basin where everything sheet flows to this area. And then we have details for a controlled outlet. to filter the stormwater prior to going to the water course. So in essence, we're here to improve a wetland situation that exists today. That's the only work we're proposing in that regulated area, is to construct a water quality basin to pre-treat the stormwater runoff that currently leaves our site today.
Okay, so thanks. So question, the stockade fence, is that going to be come down and before you start working, and you're going to put that back up when you're done?
Correct. They're gonna remove the fence, and it's old, so they're gonna remove it, construct the basin, and install a new fence in that location.
Now, the concrete blocks wall, I guess, is that going to be a barrier? They're going to have sanding or asphalt in that,
They have processed stone stockpiled in front of that, so when they go with the loader, it doesn't keep pushing the pile. It can load up against a solid wall, then keep it confined to the one spot.
Is there any chance any erosion from that can seep underneath through and get into that control basin?
So they don't handle topsoil, dirt and things like that. This is a paving contractor. They only use crushed stone, processed stone, for material that they bring to the site.
Any type of maintenance going to be done in that basin over time?
So there will be a gate so that they can access that. It will require inspection. That's part of the plans that we have, the notation about when it will be inspected. It shouldn't require any much of any maintenance over the years, but it will be inspected. And if something occurs, whether it's a little erosion or maybe there's some sort of sediment that accumulates in it, there's provisions to have that taken care of.
All right, the existing tree line, is there an existing tree line there? I noticed with the little squizzles there on the left, there is a tree line there.
Behind the fence, it's brush and growth and, scrub trees. Yeah, so there is some clearing just to accommodate the grading that's necessary to build the water quality basin.
All right, you have any questions, Commissioner Wagner?
Is this a Stam Road? Is it still a flood zone, or did they handle that by divert
So
the
the flood zone
Amtrak?
is shown on the plan.
Yep. They fixed that road a little better though, so it doesn't flood as much, right?
No, there's still problems there. I know the engineering department, along with the staff, is working with the state to kind of analyze that thing. There's a whole flooding issue in that whole Stam Road area, and other areas to the north. That really doesn't affect us. The flood, the flood zone is at the rear portion of this property. It doesn't affect anything.
Oh, so the building doesn't need to be raised or anything like that?
No,
Okay.
the front of the property is high enough.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Commissioner Bashan, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Just asked, in general, is this part of a requirement for it says proposed building? Is there going to be a new building going up? Is this a requirement for that?
The water quality basin is a requirement for that, because we're proposing a building and proposing site improvements. The town engineering staff, and through the planning and zoning department, requires that we address stormwater quality. Detention is not required because it currently is an impervious surface, but there's nothing to trap sediments and silt, or remove nutrients from the stormwater runoff.
All right, looks good to me. Looks like an improvement. Thank you.
Commissioner Paskowitz.
Commissioner Bishand took my question, so I have no further questions. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Conway.
I have nothing further.
Thank you. Commissioner Ancona.
No questions.
Okay, thank you. So, table this till,
So
next
you
meeting.
have, if you look at your last motion, you do have to determine whether you're gonna.
oh, public hearing, excuse me.
Whether
It's
it's gonna
getting
require
late.
a public hearing.
So nothing in public hearing is in my mind. Thank you. So, anyone else on the phone object? I'll just do a general call. Anyone object not having a public hearing for this?
John Bashand, I don't think it's necessary myself.
Commissioner Paskowitz?
I don't believe it's concentrated towards a public hearing either.
Thank you. Commissioner Conway?
No on the public hearing.
Thank you. Commissioner Ancona?
No on the hearing.
Okay, thank you. So may I have a motion for application 2022-06 for construction activities in the upland review area at 165 Stam Road. Applicant and contact Mike DeMayo, owner MRD Property Holdings LLC, that a public hearing is not required.
Motion option number 2, this activity will have no significant impact to the regulated area and will not require a public hearing.
May I have a second?
Commissioner Wagner seconds it.
Thank you. Okay, did you make the motion? I need another
Oh, yeah.
second. I need a second.
Yeah, sorry.
Another second from someone on the phone.
I'll second it, John Bouchard.
Second by Commissioner Bouchard. Mr. Hinckley, do you want to call the roll?
Commissioner Ancona? Commissioner Bashan?
Yes.
Commissioner Paskowitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Yes.
Commissioner Conway?
Yes.
Chairman Sedell?
Yes.
See you next month.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have to move on to old business.
Actually, I can do it. Never mind.
Moving on, item A, application 2022-03 to remove and replace an existing 100-foot by 50-foot sport court in a regulated area. Applicant Royal Villas Condo Association. Contact Heather Klinger. Is the applicant present?
I believe
Yes,
she
good
is.
evening, commissioners. My name is Heather Klinger. I'm the president of the Royal Villas Condo Association.
Okay, I saw the revised map. It's in my pile somewhere. The only open item that I had, thank you, was to put in the erosion control, whatever that was going to be, around the sport court. While they'll take down that fence, and I guess they're gonna do some milling. The wetland line boundaries on there with a buffer. How do you want to handle that, Mr. Hinckley? That was an open item from last meeting.
I showed the silt fence on the plan. If you'd like, some additional things, we can add hay bales or, a filter sock, behind the silt fence as well. If that's amenable to you, but the silt fence is shown in there.
Okay. I have no further questions on this application. Commissioner Wagner?
No, I don't.
All right, Commissioner Prashant?
I'm good.
Commissioner Paskowitz?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Conway?
No questions.
Commissioner Ancona?
No questions.
Okay. Then, in that case, are we ready? Need a motion to, for application 2022-03 to remove and replace an existing 100-foot by 50-foot sport court in the regulated area at 30 West Hartford Road. Applicant owner Royal Villas Condo Association. Contact Heather Klinger.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve application 2022-03 with the 10 standard conditions.
I don't think we have to recite them. So may I have a second?
They're in the record.
Okay.
May I have a second?
Thank you, sir.
Second, Commissioner Pascu.
Second by Commissioner Paskowitz. Final discussion. Mr. Hinckley, close call the roll.
Commissioner Ancona?
Yes.
Commissioner Bashan?
Yes.
Commissioner Paskowitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Yes.
Commissioner Conway?
Yes.
Chairman Sedell?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Unanimous. Thank you. All right, moving on to item B, extension of permit number 2017-06 at 98 Carriage Hill Drive. Is there any final discussion on this extension? Any comments, open comments from commissioners?
I have none.
Anybody on the phone want to discuss something on this one? Seeing none, I need a motion on application 2017-06 for an extension of wetland permit 2017-06 at 98 Carriage Hill Drive. Applicant owner contact Michael and Joanna Barolt.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve the extension of permit 2017-06 for additional 5 years. The new expiration date for the permit will be now May 16th, 2020.
May I have a second?
Second, Commissioner Paskowitz.
Seconded by Commissioner Paskowitz. And
I-
final
I-
discussion?
Yes, can I just say that I saw a hand go up from the public?
It's
Yeah,
not
but-
open to the public because there's no
We're
public
not
hearing.
yet at public participation anymore, so final discussion on the extension of permit 2017-04 at 98 Carriage Hill Drive. Mr. Hinckley, please call the roll.
Commissioner Ancona,
Yes.
Commissioner Bashan,
Yes.
Commissioner Paskowitz,
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes.
Commissioner Conway,
Yes.
Chairman Sedil.
Yes. All right, and moving on to item C of old business. Application number 2022-04 for Wetlands Map Amendment at 359 Church Street and 331 Tremont Street rear. Applicant and owner AA Donafria Building and Development LLC. Contact Alan Bongiovanni.
You did close the public hearing, so you can take action.
So our deliberation, I have nothing more to add.
I have nothing more to add.
Anyone on the phone? I'm not hearing none, so we're ready to vote on application 2022-04 for a map amendment at 359 Church Street and 321 Tremont Street rear. Applicant owner AA Donafria Building and Development LLC. Contact Alan Bongiovanni.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve the application 2022-04 for a wetland map amendment based on the evidence received and reviewed at a public hearing of April 19th, 2022. The effective date for the wetland map amendment will be May 16th, 2022.
May I have a second?
I'll second. Commissioner Ancona.
Seconded by Commissioner Ancona. Final discussion? Ms. Tinkley, please call the roll.
Commissioner Ancona,
Yes.
Commissioner Bashan,
Yes.
Commissioner Paskowitz,
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes.
Commissioner Conway,
Yes.
Chairman Sedil.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Correct. The next one you don't have to take action on since you held the public
Public hearing is open. Okay. Moving to the phone, item 8, public participation on non-agenda items. Is there anyone on the phone waiting?
Mr. Zalek, you can unmute yourself. Mr. Zalek, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I do have some concerns on the handling of the application that you just heard for Carriage Hill Drive. The commission may not be aware, but your regulations, section 7.1, require an application form to be filled out by the applicant for any permit, whether it's new, renewal, or an amendment. No application was submitted. I checked with Eric today and there was no application on file with the town. And also, because this was new business, you also didn't vote to determine whether a public hearing was required. And then thirdly, you moved this to old business on the same night, which is unusual. I believe you're not supposed to vote on an application the same night. You're supposed to allow a certain period of days to lapse to allow the public to protest or to petition for a public hearing. So I would like you to please, Mr. Chairman, through you, address these concerns. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to communications and reports. Item A, agent communications. Do you have anything?
I would just, is there any more public participation before we move
Oh,
on?
excuse me.
No, there is no. No.
All right, thank you for that. You guys got more endurance than me, I guess.
Nobody has raised their hand.
All right. Continue on to item 9, communication and reports. Mr. Hinckley.
So communication reports, so under agent approvals, the last month, there was one approved for 19 Clifford Street for a deck in the URA. One at 72 Ridgeview Crossing for a shed in the URA. Another one for a deck at 60 Pepperbush Lane in the URA. And another agent approval at 1872 Main Street for an above ground pool in the URA. Also, I was notified by not the HOA, but the company that's doing the treatment at the pond at Apple Hill. I think I'd mentioned that at a prior meeting that we got the application. They would be treating the pond at some point in the next couple months, and they're supposed to treat it in the middle of this month. I also received from the Highway Department, a general permit notification for work done at 145 Alumni Road. Basically, they were doing some cleanup and trimming of the area along the high school parking lot. A lot of material was chipped and they put in a berm, as has been done past practice every 5 years or so. And then they replace it. And that was originally approved and suggested by the prior town engineer, Mr. Arbor. And the reasoning for it was to help filter water that ran off the Shell process parking lot. And also to prevent dumping, so people don't back up and just dump tires in there.
Yep.
I believe the highway department pulled out in excess of 100 tires the last time they went in there to do this work. I know the berm is very tall, 5 or 6 feet tall, and some members of the public have raised concerns about it.
Just as a side note, I did visit the site. I like the berm. Littering is a problem in that area, you know. I like the barrier. I know wood chipping in upland review is generally not advisable or good custom, but in this particular case, I've got no issue with that. That's, as a barrier to keep that wind, that's good for the overall. Okay, it's good to keep the upland review litter free from debris of all sorts. So is there any action that we need to take on this? I don't know how everybody else feels on the phone.
Just reporting, I also have the town engineer, when I told him we had some concerns from the public, the town engineer did go out and he made a small report that I can read into the record if you like, and you guys can decide typically work under the general permit has been done in the past. You guys have issued the permit, and the reason for the permit is so the town doesn't have to, every time they have time to do work, they're ready to go. They don't have to run to us to potentially get a permit, et cetera.
So what would the decision have to be as far as?
There's really no decision to have to be made. I'm reporting it. If there's something you guys don't like and you want wood chips removed or something to that effect, I can certainly pass that along to the highway department. Powers that be.
My personal opinion, I like things the way they are. I see no further action unless someone else feels otherwise.
I agree.
I've
been in that area a lot.
That's a very secluded area back there, and everyone wants to give the heave ho, and I like that. What if somebody on the phone feels like if they want to tour the area, go by there? I know Commissioner Bashan, have you been in that area? I think frequented that spot.
Yes, I have, and I'd like to hear the letter that the engineer had wrote first before I make any, and I do have other comments, but if we could hear that letter, if no one is opposed to it.
That's fine. I can certainly read it.
Mr. Chairman, are you okay with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This is from the town engineer, Gary Furstenberg, sent on April 5th. I reviewed the Alumni Road site, BOE property today, and General Permit 1. The purpose of the wood chip berm is to enhance and protect the wetlands, URA, and parking area. Town of Newington removed approximately 200 tires and a load of litter, garbage, debris from the URA and wetlands prior to constructing a wood chip berm at the edge of the parking lot. The berm should reduce the dumping, which damages the URA and wetlands. Based on field observations, the Town of Newington wetland map appears to accurately represent the wetland area. Mr. Zellick observed the site during the wet season, a time of annual high water. No soil was disturbed that would require erosion controls. No tree stumps were removed that would disturb the soil. Wood chips are not considered an erodible material like sandy soil and do not require erosion controls. The wood chip berm has settled to form a dense and stable mass. It is unlikely that the water level in the wetland would rise high enough and have enough velocity for the wood chips to wash or float away. No wood chips were observed beyond the berm. Town of Newington Highway staff removed a small amount of wood chips at the HDP pipe outlet, and the Town of Newington staff will inspect the pipe before and after large storm events as they do in critical drainage locations around town. If the commission would like an environmental assessment, I'd be happy to prepare a brief statement.
Okay, Commissioner Bashan?
Yeah, so there's two issues here. One is the berm, which I really don't have a big problem with. There was an existing one. I think that, maybe a little bigger than it needs to be, but that's not the problem. The problem is on the other side of the berm, which is clearly, it appears, at least, I haven't, measured it myself, but it clearly appears to be in the URA. It looks like there was a lot of extra chips that they had to get rid of and use that opportunity to level it out there, but it looks like quite a bit of filling. In some places, a steep embankment is easily observable. So if I'll just leave it up to whoever wants to take another look there, but I think I think that is a separate issue from the berm. The berm, to me, I agree, it's not that bad, and if it helps to keep people out of there, which it does, it's quite an obstacle to climb over. But it's what's on the other side of the berm that I think is my concern anyway. So.
Do any other commissioners on the line have a comment to make? I'm not seeing any, no raised hands. So I think we're just going to table this then. Unless he wants to make Mr. Furstenberg wants to make a comment about the other side of the berm, so have for the record.
If you'd like that,
Let's do that for Commissioner Bashan. I'll acquiesce to his request. Let's have something report back in next month's meeting on communications and reports for that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Right.
I also have to report to you 3333 Berlin Turnpike. The plans for the map amendment permit and the regulated activity that were approved last year have been received by the office. They're in-house, they're ready for signature. However, the engineering department still has to do their final review for some other drainage comments and whatnot. Nothing on the wetland portion of the plans have changed at all. So this is just a requirement to satisfy condition 3 of the permit of the time of signature. So the plans are in-house, they're ready. I'm just reporting this. Once everything is signed off on by the engineering and they've finished their review, they'll be ready for signature by you, the TPZ chairman, and everything. So all the wetland comments have been addressed at this time, and they are on physically in my office on a set of plans for final review.
Okay, so we will advise on that. Thanks.
Okay. So I can report back to the applicant that you're aware of this?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And Friday's usually my best day, as you know, okay?
Right, they intend to have them completed.
How many sheets are there, actually?
It's a rather large set. It's beefy, probably 30 or so.
30? I thought it was gonna be more, well, only one set.
I can't remember. Yeah, it's all, correct. It's all in one set.
All right.
So we don't have.
Some of these guys, they want multiple sets.
So I believe their target date is sometime in mid-June to have everything complete from engineering and any other comments they have. So, that's all I have on my reports.
Okay, moving on to item B, Town Council Liaison and Communications. Is Councilor Rada or Councilor Bedrejko on the phone?
I don't believe either one.
They're not in the room.
All right. Moving on to item C, Pond Life Research and Education. Commissioner Paskowitz, do you have anything to report this month? Commissioner Paskowitz, are you there?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes. On Fridays, if anyone has the time in their day, there's a program on NPR radio. It's called Science Friday. It's very informative. A lot of it is on topics that we speak of. The last one I had listened to was regarding salamanders and frogs in Connecticut, wetlands and breeding and such, and how there's a decline of salamanders and frogs due to forested habitat being released from development and fragmentation. More specifics to that. One of the speakers was the herpetologist by the name of Dennis Quinn. He's the proprietor for Dennis Quinn Ecological Studies, and he spoke on migration and spring migration to vernal pools and wetlands as well. Very informative. He's open for municipalities to utilize as well as environmentalist. Another speaker that was very prominent, Mark Urban. He's the professor of ecological department in Yukon. He also spoke regarding salamanders and frogs and the impact by climate change in our warmer summers and how the weather being warmer can increase diseases. So I'll just leave you with that. There's an NPR station on Friday called Science Friday, if anyone's interested. And it does speak to our commission. That's what I have to address tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Paskowitz. Item 10, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a
Second.
motion, John Bashan.
Moved by
Second.
Commissioner Bashan, seconded
Second.
by Commissioner Conway. All in favor? Aye. Have a good night.
Night.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you. The mics